same.
TikTok.
Gonna wait. It's gonna.
5 seconds.
Mine says 6.
You got it down to the second, huh? Okay, at 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Canton City Council work session. This is May the 2nd, 2019. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Goodman?
May we bow. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all that are here tonight. We ask that you be with our public service people and guide and direct, keep them safe. We ask that we conduct our business in a good manner and that we move Canton forward. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Welcome, everyone. First item we have is consideration to approve our agenda tonight. I would like to request that we amend the agenda by deleting item 10B and postponing it until our June work session, which is a joint project agreement between Cherokee Cobb Water Authority and Cherokee County and City of Canton. Are there any other requests or changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Goodwin made the motion. Ms. Wilson seconded the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay, we have as our next item a public hearing on proposed amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Development Code, Chapters 106 and 107 for floodplain regulations, and Chapter 11 for sanitary sewer pipelining. Mr. Patton, you want to tell us about that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The proposed amendments for the floodplain regulations involve Chapter 106, which is our definitions, then 107, which is our resource management, where our actual floodplain regulations are contained. Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA, has new floodplain maps that have been going through the Federal Register and public comments, and they have an effective date of June 7th of this year in regards to Cherokee County properties, floodplains, that sort of thing. In conjunction with that, FEMA as well as Georgia EPD, Georgia DNR have indicated that we need to amend language in a few sections within those two chapters. I did present the council members with a paper copy of the current existing language and the proposed language. This has to be done prior to June 7th for anyone that wishes to participate in the floodplain insurance program through FEMA.
Okay. All right. We are, this is in our agenda, but this is a public hearing, so I will open the hearing now. Do we require 2 public hearings? We'll have one at the next meeting or not?
No, sir.
It'll be just this one, and then the vote will come at our next meeting on...
that is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, on the 16th. Okay. Are there anyone who would like to make comments regarding the amendments to our Code of Ordinances, Development Code, Chapters 106 and 107 for floodplain regulations, and Chapter 111 for sanitary sewer pipelining? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing. I would make one comment myself regarding that after we've closed the public hearing, but just for discussion purposes, the sewer pipelining, a specified product is listed in there, and I would suggest that the wording be changed not to identify a specific product when there are other products on the market that allegedly do the same thing, and that we have something that more generic that says that The ductile iron pipes shall be lined, but with a product that is approved by our staff, or some statement like that. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
One quick question on the definitions. Mr. Patton, it says building, definition of building, it's a delete and replace. Is the one you listed in here, is this the new one, or is it the one we're deleting, or?
If you're looking in the ordinance, that is the proposed new definition. If you're looking at the paper copy that shows current followed by proposed, the proposed would be the new language and definition.
Okay. So this says, I think these are just your proposal changes, but this says delete and replace building any structure attached to the ground having a roof supported. So in the new ordinance, that is the new definition of building, the one included in the ordinance?
Yes, the one in the ordinance would be the new definition.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Probably haven't had time to really absorb these, so between now and 2
Mr.
weeks.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Hatabian is here if you wish him to address that about the sanitary sewer
Okay.
lining
Sure.
in that language.
Thank you. The Protecto 401 is kind of an industry standard. It's been used forever. It is a ceramic epoxy lining that's used only on gravity sewers to prevent corrosion from the hydrogens and sulfide. If you do a Google search on ceramic epoxy lining, everything comes up Protecto 401. All the pipe manufacturers list Protecto 401 on their specs, and Cherokee County Water and Sewer Authority specs list Protecto 401. We just kind of modeled it after theirs. So,
Well, I did a Google search on it, and I came up with the most common sewer pipe linings and coatings. And Enduron coatings, that's the manufacturer of Protecto.
Enduron, yeah.
But there's also Permite Corporation, which manufactures Permox CTF, which was introduced in 2009, and TNEMEC Company, which manufactures PermaShield. And I just thought that, if there's other products out there that claim to do the same thing.
well, we can certainly list it as a ceramic epoxy coating. That's fine. We can do that.
I think I would, and then let staff decide if you want Protecto. That's fine, But
Yeah, the other thing that I know you can do is list it as this is the standard that we're looking for, or something to that thing. But that's pretty
fine.
much it.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so let's move along. Guests and visitors. One of the first things I'd like to insert in there Chief, before you do your thing, is Valinda Hardy would like to make some announcements about what all the events that's going on downtown and so forth.
I think I've become a sign person lately. We have signs everywhere. Good evening, everyone. Want to let you know of a few things that are going on in our downtown. First of all, for downtown business, Drunk, Junk, Drunk. I do it every time. Drunk, Jones. There we go. They're going to celebrate their 4th anniversary tomorrow. So if you have a chance, just kind of stop by and congratulate them on 4 years downtown. Tomorrow night is our first Friday. The return, which is the Beatles tribute band, will be with us. We have 17 food and beverage vendors that will be here. And then we've got some new activities for the kids also. I want to thank, I'm not sure who's here, but publicly thank our Public Works and Park and Rec Department for everything that they've done to make us look really pretty downtown, if any of you have had a chance to go out and look today, and what they are going to do to get us ready for tomorrow night. So we really appreciate everything that they have done. The Canton Festival of the Arts will be this Saturday and Sunday with all the inclement weather that possibly could be coming in, but we hope and pray that they'll continue on. And that will be Saturday and Sunday in Brown Park, and each day's activities will be from 10 until 5. The outdoor, no, let me go back to the farmer's market. That kicks off next Saturday, and that's the 11th. And as of this afternoon, we have 58 vendors that are going to be coming.
Good.
There's going to be some creative placemaking on making sure they all get in there. We are going to have a ribbon cutting that morning at 9 a.m. to kick off the season. So make sure if you are in town and available, if you'll come by. I don't even want to tell you where to go. I'm going to just say gazebo and just hope that maybe there's not a vendor in there. But just congregate there, and Mr. Peppers has let us know that he will take care of all that for us, and so we're going to have a ribbon cutting. Then we will have that evening, we will kick off our outdoor movie series in Brown Park. That will begin around 8:45. The first movie for May is the Lego Movie, Part 2. And then we've got other movie nights, which are June 8th and July 6th. The admission is the Etowah Film Festival will be held at Canton Theater, May 23rd through 26th. The tickets are available now. And so we held a pep rally Monday, and a lot of you were able to attend, and we appreciate that, to announce all the great things that are happening in Canton. And I was able to have the number one slide. I was proud of that. So the number one item on the great things are happening in Canton list was the announcement that we made the top 25 for the Independent We Stand America's Main Street contest. So we have these signs that are out and around. And so what happened was there was 232 Main Street communities that were involved. When I brought this to you, there were like 80-something. So it increased that much in the time in a month. So people got in on it. There were over 230,000 votes that were cast, but we made the top 25 across the United States. That's something to be extremely proud of. So all those votes are gone. New votes are starting over again until May 26th, hoping to be in the top 10. So you can vote up to 25 times per day per IP address, and the site is mainstreetcontest.com. I've had this memorized, /profile, / I think it's 163. I think that's us. But you can go to the downtown page, you can go to the city page and pick up that link, and you can vote. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. We want that top 10. We want that $25,000 for our new businesses that we want to have come in. So every vote counts, and we just appreciate your help with that. So that's what we've got going on.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great. Okay, Chief, employee recognition.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. City Manager, for the record, I voted yesterday, so I'll vote some more. So.
Just don't do it while you're driving.
That's right. We always, as you know, like to recognize our employees for achievements, so, and today is no different. For the month of January, February, and March, our supervisors and our commanders got together and came up with our Employee of the Quarter. And this individual has an awesome attitude, a great mindset, and a heart for this city, for this department, for our community, and is a great fit and asset to our organization. So if I can have Officer Mary Lewis come forward, please. But again, Officer Lewis has been with us now, I think, going on a year and a half, and she is a great face for our agency. The other officers that we have, they all work together, and like I said, the mindset that she has for our community and for our department is second to none. So again, congratulations, and for being Employee of the Quarter.
Okay, we'll start.
Hey, everyone.
I thought Chief might have something else, but I
Oh, I'm
get
sorry.
you through, right? Okay. Highway 140 corridor study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you all know, we've been working on the Highway 140 corridor study with Cherokee County and Atkins for the last little while. Tonight we have Atkins here to present the final report. So I will turn it over to Shaw and Steve to come and present for you guys. If you do have any questions, I'll be back up after. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. So my name is Shah Imran, and I work with Atkins. So we looked at the SR1 corridor, SR140 corridor based on the operation and safety analysis, and we came up with some recommendations and what I will be talking about at the end of the presentation. So just an overview of the project. So it's along SR140, and it begins at the Riverstone Parkway and the Minnesota Highway, which is the southern end of the project. And it ends at the Laurel Canyon and the Great Sky Parkway, which is the northern end of the project. The project corridor is about 2.4 miles long, and it has a speed limit of 45 miles per hour until it reaches to the Puris Road. The north of Puris Road is 55 miles per hour. We have three major intersections there, which are all signalized intersections. The southern end of the corridor, which is the Riverstone Parkway, and then the northern end of the corridor, which is the Great Sky and Laurel Canyon, and the Reinhardt College Parkway. So we looked at all these three intersections based on the intersection control evaluation when we are coming up with the recommendations, and that is part of the GDOT policy right now, that whenever we try to change the orientation of an existing intersection, we have to go through the ICE process, which is the intersection control evaluation. We have several minor non-signalized intersections as well along that corridor, such as the Hospital Road, north and south, and the Puris Road, north and south, and so on. And we'll be talking about that more when we'll go into the recommendation. So a little bit of the traffic pattern that we observed when we were looking at the operations along these corridors. So in the morning peak period, the majority of traffic, they would travel towards south. And we looked at from the perspective of where most of the traffic is going. And in terms of I-575 traffic, most of the traffic, they would go to the southern end of the corridor and then turn right to the Marietta Highway. In the morning peak period or peak hour, we have observed 800 cars turning right within an hour period of time, and that's a lot of traffic. Vice versa, for PM, we saw the reverse flow, but this time it's a 50-50 split, so it's not a 40-60 split anymore. So that means that the Reinhardt College Parkway is also contributing a lot of traffic during PM peak period. So based on the Georgia Department of Transportation's policy, we looked at the growth rate based on different sources, and one of the sources is the historic ADT, which looks at the traffic pattern from 2002 to 2017. And we also looked at the Census Bureau data, which looks at the population of this county in 2000, 2010, and 2017. We looked at the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget's recommendation, and we also looked at the Atlanta Regional Commission's model, and based on all these different sources, we came up with an annual compound growth rate of 1.8%. We also looked at the approved land use models that was provided by the city of Canton, and we looked at the residential and commercial areas around SR140 and the Reinhardt College Parkway, and how they can affect the traffic pattern along SR140 in 2021 and 2041. And based on all this information, we did the operational analysis for 2018, which is our existing year, because that's when the study started. And we did our operational analysis for 2021 and 2041. So for existing year 2018, we observed degrading operation at the Marietta Highway or the Riverstone Parkway intersection, which is level of service E. Now, let me give you a little bit background how we rank the level of service. So we have level of service from A to F. So when it goes to F, that means that the operation broke down, and you have 80-second or more delay at that intersection per vehicle. So when we looked at 2021 no build and build, which means that after our recommendations at the Reinhardt College Parkway and the Marietta Riverstone Highway Parkway, we observed better level of service at both of those intersections. So the level of service went down from E to D for AM peak hour, and for PM it went down again from E to D. And that, and operation-wise, that translates to $1.5 million worth of savings. Now, if we look at 2041, and the report actually talks about how much delay you will incur in 2041 per vehicle, and the report says that you will cut down delay by 50% by implementing the recommendations that we are providing. And similarly for no build PM, and even though it says level of service F for the build, we showed that the delay goes down 46%. Now, we collected crash data along SR 140 for 5 years, most recent 5 years, and we did a hotspot analysis to see where most of those crashes are happening. And based on that, we found that the 3 signalized intersections and the Hospital Road intersection experienced most of the crashes. Now, the recommendation part, so based on our analysis and observations, we came up with 3 different types of recommendations. One is the short term, which can be done pretty quickly in 0 to 12 months period of time. And then the next one is the interim improvement, which can be done from 1 to 2 years time frame, or 1 to 5 years of time frame, and the long-term improvement, which is 5 to 20 years of time frame. So the short-term improvement is that what we're recommending is to extend the right turning lane, the southbound right turning lane at the Riverstone Parkway, all the way to Shoal Creek Road. Because unfortunately we could not show the videos that we took, the drone videos, and it would show that because of the through movement, most of the right turning traffic in the AM, they will just back up all the way to Reinhardt College Parkway. So if we can extend that right turning lane to Shoal Creek Road, then the right turning traffic can bypass the through traffic, and they will have a smooth movement down there. Another improvement that we recommended is to have a right-in, right-out at the Walgreens driveway and the Hospital Road, since the traffic went down significantly at the Hospital Road because of the removal of the hospital. And the third improvement that we propose is to have a signal upgrade at that intersection, so that whenever you have the eastbound and westbound left turning lane, left turning movement green is on, you will have a southbound right turn green activated at that time. And we also had some discussion with the Georgia official, the GDOT officials as well, and they are also on board with most of those, all of those recommendations. So the probable cost for all these would be $250,000. Now the interim improvements, and we separated the entire corridor into 7 different areas. So for the area 1, so that's the, so in that case, we are recommending to have a median that will separate the the southbound and the northbound traffic on the southbound approach of SR 140. The main reason is that even if you have the island on Walgreens and the Hospital Road, people would still try to turn left in those intersections. And that would affect the continuous movement for the southbound or the northbound through traffic. So we would recommend to have a physical median in between the southbound and northbound movement. The second recommendation would be to realign the Shoal Creek Road, because right now we have a very high skew observed at that intersection, and that is a very safety, and from safety perspective is a big concern. So we are proposing to realign Shoal Creek Road to Mary Lane and have some left turn and right turning lane there for the intersection. So the overall cost for that for all those improvements would be $3.75 million. So for area 2, there's SR 140 at the Hospital Road and Old Donaldson Road. And similarly, we are also recommending to realign the Hospital Road so that it can meet SR 140 at a right angle, instead of having a very high skew movement. And that's the location we observe a lot of angle crashes happening. It could be because of the side distance, or it could be because of the lighting issues. So whatever the situation is, having them meeting the SR 140 at a right angle would minimize most of those angle crashes. So the overall cost for all these improvements would be $1.6 million. Area 3, which is the Reinhardt College Parkway, and we did a intersection control evaluation for this intersection to see which alternative works better. So for future, this intersection will perform better as a multi-lane roundabout. But for current situation, so that we can have some better operation at that intersection, we proposed a continuous green T, which is also known as a Florida T, which will have the southbound through movement without any traffic light. So the southbound through movement will not be affected by traffic light. And we saw the operation-wise, we have a big benefit to cost ratio for that intersection. And we are also proposing to have right-in, right-out at some of the nearby driveways and roadways. The overall cost would be $2.4 million to do all those stuff, but only to do the continuous green T, it would cost $500,000 to $600,000. So the area 4 is SR 140 at the Belletta Drive and Peary's Road. Is just we are just proposing to have a right angle meetup with SR 140 and left and right turning lanes. The cost would be $1.6 million. Area 5, again, meeting at a right angle at SR 140 and turning lanes, the cost $400,000. Area 6, SR 140 at Peary's Road, realign Peary's Road to meet at right angle with SR 140, turning lanes at Peary's Road, and a approved future development, and also have a right-in, right-out at that location. The total cost would be $2.5 million. And last of all is SR 140 at Laurel Canyon and Great Sky Parkway intersection. So we got some complaints from the public that the eastbound right turning traffic, they sometimes get in front of the southbound through traffic, and that may become a safety concern. So they wanted us to look at it from a safety perspective. So we recommended to have to reduce the turning radius for the right turning traffic, so that they will be forced to stop before they make a right turn. the total and some signal upgrade so that you'll have a turning, right turning light for that movement. The total cost is $250,000. Now the long term, which could be implemented for in between 5 to 20 years time frame, and we also have 1 to 6 areas for these long-term improvements. So the first of all is as a 140 at Riverstone Parkway, and as you guys already know, that during the PM peak period, you have very heavy left turning traffic from Marietta Highway going north, and they flow back quite a distance. So we propose dual left turning lanes on Riverstone Parkway, Marietta Highway, and Waleska Street. So at the same time, since you have dual left turn at Marietta Highway going north, that means you need 2 receiving lanes, and by GDOT standard, we have to go at least 750 feet. So we are dropping that lane at 750 feet distance from the intersection. So the overall cost will be $10.4 million, which can be broken down in different pieces so that you can have the left turning, the eastbound left turning lanes first, develop first, and then the westbound and the southbound, the northbound left turning lanes. So we can have them by pieces for the long-term improvements. The second one that I was talking about, the roundabout at the Reinhardt College Parkway, and the overall cost to have a multi-lane roundabout is $3.4 million. And last of all, the Cherokee County Comprehensive Transportation Plan has an aspiration project, which is to widen SR 140 in future years, pending on the funding from ARC. And if we can do that, then we'll have a 4-lane divided roadway with median and an 8-foot wide multi-purpose paths for pedestrian walkway. The overall estimations from that CTP was $40 million. So that's the final sketch for the long-term improvements. That's all. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns.
It's clear that the worst congestion in the corridor at present is at the south end by Riverstone Parkway. And it progressively gets less bad as you go north. And I'm sorry. So that was the focus of our looking at this, was let's try and find improvements that we can make right away that will make some kind of difference, phasing it to the north as we go. As you saw and as Shah talked about, these are all incremental in nature so that they can be done over time. In the long run, we still believe that the corridor needs to be widened to a 4-lane roadway. But a lot of these improvements will buy time. And as you're out there trying to get funding, $40 million is a lot of money, and you'll be competing against a lot of other people who also want federal and state funds. We did have a meeting with GDOT to discuss these improvements, and they were receptive to the short-term improvements and indicated that they would be willing to participate. Unfortunately, they have a queue of a couple years for some of the immediate improvements, but they at least were receptive. I think another thing that we wanted to let you know is that we did spend a deal of time looking at the development in the corridor and trying to analyze out to the future how long you can get by with some of these improvements, and we feel like this will buy you some time. So when we're talking about the interim improvements, that is something that should be able to carry this corridor for some time to come.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Nick?
So I know along this area there's city, state, and county land. When you mentioned the state, you mentioned it to GDOT. does all of this have to go through GDOT, or if we did the south end, is that Canton and we're okay, or how does that work?
It's a GDOT facility, and so everything has to be approved through GDOT.
Okay. From a funding standpoint, then how do we think about that?
My guess is if you came to the table with money, they would be very receptive. But yeah, essentially, they would look to be a partnership, and so they would want to be involved in the process. I think they would be very receptive to indicating that they were supportive of the project.
Okay, thank you.
But these highways are state routes owned by the state of Georgia, right?
That is correct.
Both, I guess it's Riverstone or Riverstone as well as 140.
140 Waleska. The portion of Waleska to the south of Riverstone is not.
Okay, right, yeah, to cross the bridge and back this way, yeah, okay. So question is whether or not we would be putting city taxpayer funds into state highways. We get a minimal amount of state funds for our local streets, but they don't come in and pave them or don't improve them for us, you know. So, I mean, it's going to take, I think, a sales job, but I think if we worked through our legislative delegation, you know, we could get some, we could certainly have some influence in that respect. Let me ask a question about, looking at the cost figures, those were construction only, or did y'all estimate what additional, if any, right-of-way would be required?
We did try and estimate the right-of-way costs. Right now, I think the prevailing right-of-way, I believe, is about 80 feet. And
okay.
I think, at least in the long term, you would be looking at like 120 feet of right-of-way. We did try and lay out maps showing, but I think right now, and ultimately you would end up having to make decisions about which side of the road to go on. But I believe the way we laid them out now is generally it's down the center.
Okay. So the $40 million did not include any projected cost of additional right-of-way of the extra 40 feet or so?
The answer, I think, in all the cost numbers that we put together for the intermediate, those do include additional money for right-of-way.
Okay.
The $40 million, I believe, may include additional money for right-of-way, but I'm not for absolutely sure about that.
Okay. Mr. Grant.
What was your total cost of all the interim improvements suggested, proposed?
They were around 10 to 12 million
Total?
total. For the interim.
One was
For all-
10.6 million alone.
The southern end was 10 million, I think. Okay, the southern end was 10 million, and then the roundabout was an additional 3.4.
Well, they were part of the long-term improvements. So only for the interim, it was 10 to 12. But for long-term, the southern end intersection was 10.2 million to do the dual lift and stuff like that. And the roundabout was 3.4 million.
And those interim and long-term proposed solutions are to buy time until the 4 lanes possibly go in? Or
I think in essence the answer is yes. There's a little bit of overlap too. So what was shown, I think, as the interim was the Florida T, which would be a lesser cost, and it doesn't involve as much right-of-way. But the roundabout would be part of the longer-term improvement. So there is some overlap there in terms of cost.
And when you said Georgia DOT was receptive to these suggested improvements, were they receptive to the cost as well?
I think they only really indicated receptivity to the very, very short-term costs. And in fact, I believe that they could potentially do some of the signal work themselves in-house. Also, I was remiss, I should say, Cherokee County has been a partner with this study, and they paid for half of the study, and they are very receptive to making improvements and looking at potential resources as well.
It seems some part of the negotiation may be if they buy more time for the 4 lanes, they may be more receptive to some of the short-term solutions. But the interim solutions would be on top of the 40 million, so it's not part of the 40 million, correct?
We tried to do these in such a way that you didn't, I mean, there is some residual benefit of each. When you do the southern end and looking at, you will have to do additional right-of-way to put a median and things like that. So you'll be collecting that right-of-way at the same time. That will be something less that you will have to do in the long term.
Okay, thank you.
Did these cost figures include anything for utility relocations? They did.
Yes, it includes the construction, right-of-way, and utility costs.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just wanted to ask about street lights. I had a constituent point out to me a couple of months ago that there's no street light at the intersection of Reinhardt College Parkway and Highway 140, and it's very dark for people who are not familiar with that. Would a street light there be the responsibility of the city, or would that be a DOT-funded project?
Are both of those are state routes, aren't they? Or are they?
I would think it would be a GDOT
State project.
If you put it in the right of way,
Yeah.
if you're outside the right of way, then you don't.
Doesn't matter.
We'll put in the right away.
Yeah. Just notice that when you're coming out at night, notice if you're not familiar with, as you come out there, that it is very dark. I've driven it through.
Well, let's think about this for a second. When the city goes in and installs lights to make an intersection better, or has a specific style of light that they would like to put in, then the city's responsible for that cost. So, for instance, the lights that are at the interchange at exit 19, we pay the electricity on those lights. I wasn't here when they were put in, so I don't know if we paid the capital cost to have them put in. DOT did the capital cost, we paid for the electric. That's probably the same way it would work on this particular intersection or anything else in that corridor.
But that was not in your traffic study, those street lights there. I didn't notice that they were in the traffic
Yeah,
study.
they were not included in the study.
We could request that they do that, and and we would pay the power bill. So, and they very well may do it. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Will there be any burying of utilities in the area? Are there utility poles out there, and will utilities be buried or remain on poles?
Essentially, that's a design issue. I'm not as familiar with this as I should be, but generally if it's local delivery electricity, then it's not uncommon to do buried utilities. Some places do it based on the climate. I don't know if that would be pertinent here.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay. All right, you have in your agenda package the draft minutes from the April 18th, 2019 meeting. Are there any corrections or changes or comments regarding those? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Yon made the motion to approve. Mr. Goodwin, I believe, seconded that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. You also have in your agenda package the financials for March. These do not require any action, but our Chief Financial Officer, Nathan Ingram, is here to answer any questions if you have any. Okay, moving along. 2-minute public input period. We have one here. Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. My name is Thomas Weaver, and I reside at 131 Old Marietta Road. I'd like to begin first by extending my sincerest thanks to both council members Grant and Ms. Wilson for returning my phone call and answering a few questions that I had in regards to an item on tonight's agenda. Thank you. Also, I certainly don't want to steal any of Mr. Pepper's thunder, but there's a whisper in the wind. I overheard that waste management and advanced disposal may at some point in the future consolidate. At least that was a press release from Advanced Disposal, and I just wanted to know whether or not that would change anything that we have arranged here as far as trash service. I'm sure that Mr. Peppers will speak more to that maybe later this evening. And speaking of Mr. Peppers, I had the privilege of speaking with Mr. Peppers' executive assistant, Ms. Bell, in regards to a recent legislative occurrence and gubernatorial ratification of House Bill 217, which purports to authorize these syringe services and exempts them from criminal and civil penalty and holds them immune, both civilly and criminally, which is of grave consternation to myself, and I approach that with grave trepidation in light of the events that unfolded last year in regards to Action Church and Pastor Lamb, not suggesting that Pastor Lamb has gone public again and tried to reignite any vigor in that crusade, but I would ask council to be apprised of that based on my conversation with Mr. Pepper's office. And finally, as you may recall, last year, I also sat down and spoke with the DDA about this during their board meeting. The Georgia Supreme Court granted certiorari and will this coming Thursday, I believe, if not, it's either Wednesday or Thursday, they'll hold oral arguments in the matter of Philip Evans versus the Atlanta Botanical Garden to answer the question of whether or not a private leaseholder can ban weapons on public property, which neither the city nor the Y is any stakeholder in that case, but certainly the outcome of that case could have bearing on the Y's arrangements for the no firearms matter that I alluded to a year ago today. So I would ask that you keep that in mind. And of course, the mayor indicated to me in previous comment via email that the city would keep an eye on that as well. So a few things, a little bit of food for thought there. But again, thank you. And hopefully you will continue to help keep Canton moving forward with those ideas in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Under old business, we have discussion, possible action to agree to Downtown Development Authority purchase and sale agreement with Cherokee County Historical Society for the sale of 221 East Marietta Street for $1.32 million. Mr. Peppers?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and Council, as you know, you approved an intergovernmental agreement with the Downtown Development Authority, allowing them to act as an agent on behalf of the city to find a buyer for our former police department building at 221 East Marietta. The Downtown Development Authority approved your intergovernmental agreement, and we began searching for a buyer based on those terms that would purchase the property for $1.3 million, $1.32 million, and provide a local history museum at the site. Cherokee County Historical Society agreed to the terms of a purchase agreement with the Downtown Development Authority, so both of those parties have agreed to that, and ultimately it's up to the mayor and council to approve that transaction. Just so you're aware, the way that will stack up is that the Historical Society will be paying a $600,000 down payment to the Downtown Development Authority upon closing on the property. As we have historically done, the city uses some of its hotel motel tax dollars to provide an annual grant to the Historical Society, which they have used in prior years for their smaller museum and visitor center at the historic courthouse. So what is anticipated by this agreement is that the city will continue to provide grants to the Historical Society on an annual basis, and that they would use those grants to pay off the remaining debt at $1.32 million. That would be done through a promissory note agreement between the city and the Historical Society. No, Mr. Dyer.
Motion to approve.
The note is between the
DDA and the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Goodwin seconded. Mr. Grant made the motion. Any other discussion? I only have one question, and Mr. Dyer probably addressed this. Is this an intergovernmental agreement, or just an agreement?
Well, we have the intergovernmental agreement with the DDA, which provided that any contract they had to be subject to the approval of the city council. So this contract is not an intergovernmental agreement. We just have the ability to approve it.
Okay, here the question I have, and the only reason I raise it is because historically, the way we've looked at commitments and financial commitments beyond the end of the year or even further than that, you know, we certainly have no problem making a financial commitment to the Historical Society in that respect. However, this actually says the city shall grant organization a sum of at least $25,000 annually, at least 25. Is that a commitment that is in, and I assume that's for 25 or 28 years?
The agreement between the city and the Historical Society does not bind the city beyond 1 year.
Beyond 1 year at a time?
It's an annual appropriation. There's a separate agreement.
Even though that's what it says, the city shall grant organization the sum of at least 25,000 annually?
Right.
Looks like it binds it to me, but I mean.
Yeah, somewhere we addressed that because that was a point of discussion among all of us about what that does to them. But it is certainly, this is the agreement we've always had with them. All that changed was saying that it had to be used for the purchase of a building. Otherwise, it's the same agreement that we've always had with them.
Yeah.
What we do annually on the tax, just for your benefit, is make a contribution out of hotel taxes to a recipient. We require them to have a memorandum of understanding with the city. We outline in that memorandum what funds they're receiving and how those funds are supposed to be spent to keep the city in compliance with hotel tax law on the expenditure of those dollars. And so what would happen in this instance is every year we would have an MOU with the Historical Society. We would outline in that what the appropriation is to them of that grant, and we would outline within that how much of that has to go back to the Downtown Development Authority for debt service.
So the memorandum of understanding is an annual thing.
That's correct.
Done every year.
That's correct.
And this agreement then is.
I'm sorry, I was looking for where we addressed that.
Okay.
Paragraph 16.
Okay.
It says it automatically renews unless either party terminates it. So we have the right to terminate it each year.
Sounds good. That's exactly what I was looking for.
That's why I put that in. I knew it was in there. I couldn't remember where.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you.
And I would just mention there's a large contingency of the Historical Society here tonight. And I know they've been anxiously awaiting this evening.
Yay.
We're waiting. When are we closing? It has to close by August.
By August 15th, I think is what we have.
August 15th. Sorry, save your pennies. Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
thank you.
I would like to thank all the members of the Historical Society who came here tonight and thank them for their patience as we've negotiated this contract. I'm very excited about this. I think it's a great use of the property that all citizens can benefit from. And I'm even more excited that the purchase price is the full appraisal price, which I think helps all property owners downtown, but I think it's going to be a great addition to downtown. And so thank you all for the work you do every day. So,
absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Next item, which will be item 11A, discussion of the Archer Street parking deck project, including presentation for finalists. Two finalists, Clark Patterson Lee and Lyman Davidson Dooley. What I would like to do on that is we have had a committee, and they have made a presentation to staff members and a committee here. But just for the sake of allowing the full council to ask any questions and compare, if they like to do that, then get their questions answered, I thought it would be good to have each group come introduce themselves, you know, make a short statement, no more than, say, 5 minutes or so, and then let the council ask them some questions. Okay?
Thank you.
Don't want a full presentation.
Yeah.
Okay?
I was going to give an introduction, but I'll just turn it over to Clark Patterson Lee, Brian Miller with Clark Patterson Lee.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
My name is Brian Miller. I'm a senior associate with Clark Patterson Lee, and tonight I have with me both Larry Ginn and Tim Pulver, who most of you met the first time we went through our interview. Also with me tonight is Kevin McOmer, who's our principal in charge, and Jennifer Harper, who's our principal over our transportation group. Thank you for involving us in this process. We understand that this is a very important project for the city of Canton. We're very excited to be involved. My practice at CPL is parking deck design. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I've been involved with several hundred parking projects over the time. My background is in structural civil engineering. Tim is our architect of record, and Larry represents our site civil design. Just a little bit about CPL. We have two offices locally, one in Woodstock and one in Suwanee, and most of the work for this project we done out of the Woodstock office. And we're a completely, fully integrated, self-performing engineering firm, so we have all of our design in-house. We operate as one team, basically one office. Tim and Larry and I all work together every day. We work together as a team from every aspect of the design. And again, we are completely self-performing. Just keep in mind, too, we represent our own practices. We don't come here as business development. We're not here for marketing. We are all of record. We're all in practice. We all have our expertise in design, and that's what we'll represent for you throughout the project. So we don't hand this off to anybody else after we're selected. We are involved in every meeting from the beginning to the end. And as I mentioned, Jennifer's here tonight. Jennifer has over 20 years of experience in transportation, and she managed the perimeter CID, where she worked with developers and the municipalities of that CID to develop projects, make it all coordinated, involve parking, infrastructure. And that's how we're going to look at this. We're going to treat this, instead of just a single building, as more of a master plan, and how the building is going to react to your downtown, how it's going to implement your vision. Our process is like I said, is very cohesive. We look at the different connections and how the access of the garage react, not just from a driver standpoint, but from a pedestrian standpoint, and how that all blends together with your vision. We're here to help you implement that, but it's your vision for your town, so we want to make sure you get what you want out of it. As we mentioned in our first interview, we have a certain approach we go through in parking garage design, and like I mentioned before, it's more of an inside out. We look at the level of service, which is similar to the Atkins guys that mentioned about level of service. When it comes to road design, we do the same on parking decks, where we establish different levels of services for different aspects of the garage, whether it be drive lane width, stall width. That gets established with you and your staff, and we work with you to give you information in order for you to make the correct decisions for your patrons, your constituents, and also your budget. So all of that is developed by us. We'll bring it to you in several options, work with you to help you implement exactly what you're looking for within your budget. We didn't come here with a bunch of pictures of past garages we've done. We treat it as a unique design. Canton has a unique brand, you have a unique style, so we want to provide the same unique design for you. So I didn't want to come here and show you that, hey, we can do this, we've done that, because we really start over, and we really look at what's important to you. You tell us that, and we help you implement it. And so it's your brand, and it's your unique style that we want to help you maintain. CPL, most of our our clients are municipal, either at the state or local government level. So we completely understand the process that you go through in making decisions that you have to make, and from the public involvement. We have several of our staff members who are former city or county commissioners. So this whole process is really is common to us. So we know what you have to go through in getting a project like this developed. And just as a example of other North Georgia cities that we serve now, we've got over 17 municipalities that we serve at different levels, from anything from plan review all the way up through community development. So again, we are really in tune with what you have to go through, and really are excited about moving forward and helping you guys through this process. So, so anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And
you did that just right.
So,
just
yep.
Exactly, I'm telling you. My timer doesn't go off now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? I have one now. If you were given this contract tomorrow, when would we be parking cars in that deck?
Well, I say we have a couple months of design and probably 6 to 9 months of construction, so sometime next year.
Mid to fall next year, maybe?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that time frame based on a prefab solution?
With the precast that we discussed?
Precast.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So if you did the cast in place option, it may be just a little bit longer, but yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay. All right. Next group. It's okay.
Roland Davidson with
Right.
Davidson.
Okay. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Baxter with Lyman Davidson Dooley. I would be the project architect. I'm here to introduce Lyman Davidson Dooley and the Tim Haas team. Tim Haas is a parking garage consultant that's been around for about 30 years, and 25 actually. Lyman Davidson Dooley's been around for about 30 years. I'm not normally one to get up here and speak, so excuse me, but I'm going to hand it over to Roland. He's going to talk about the process, and Mike is going to talk about the parking deck side of things, since we only have 5 minutes.
Mayor, members of the council, again, thank you all for this opportunity. We showed you just a few of the decks that we've done. We've done many parking decks. Tim Haas's firm has probably done 3,500 parking decks. So we are professionals, and he is an expert. And that's why we teamed with him. I've known Mike for many years. I'm going to let him talk about some of the particulars on that, and then we'll close.
Thank you, Roland. My sole practice does nothing but parking design. We don't design bridges or buildings or medical office facilities. All we do are parking structures. I've been in this business since 1989, and so I've designed and planned hundreds and hundreds of parking decks over my 30-year history. This is your first parking deck, and because of that, it's going to be imperative that it makes a great first impression. So from a design perspective, and the good news is we've got a great site to work with. There are multiple functional options that work on the site. But to help us communicate the level of comfort of the parking deck, we too use the level of service approach. And that talks to floor heights, lighting levels, how safe the parking deck feels on the inside, which is really critical for your very first parking deck. People want it to feel safe or they won't use it. So we use this approach to basically convey what the design feels like. A is excellent, like a grade at school. B is good. C is average. This particular parking deck, as your first one, just like with the City of Cumming decks that we did recently, they want a level service A. They want a really good functioning parking deck that was efficient, affordable, but very user-friendly. And that's exactly what my firm is known for, and that's what we've done all around the country, actually all around the world. Stepping back 1 second, you've got a great site. This is one option. There are many options that we're going to study, and it's a collaborative effort. We're going to develop multiple functional designs and come to a conclusion on one that works the best on the site, that provides the best experience, but is also affordable. And most likely it'll be precast, because precast right now is the low-cost provider structurally. Goes up faster, You can treat it really nice architecturally. And lastly, if we go down this road, I'm a Park Smart advisor. And Park Smart is a way to certify a parking garage to say you've done smart design. It's a brand new certification. So if we do go down that path, I have that certification.
Thanks, Mike. One of the things we want to do is show you part of our process, and that is how do we study the site that we're going to work on and the level of detail that we go through the analysis as we go through working with the city to develop the actual plan. So we did this concept, again, in a vacuum. Normally we're working with the city and all the stakeholders involved, but the site does work. We've actually laid out every floor plan for this scheme. We have 5.7% slopes on our ramps, which is ideal. You want to be between 5 and 6%. And so what that means is you can park on the ramp and open your door and you're not going to smash into the car next to you. Everybody's seen those parking ramps that you don't want to do. We looked at coming off Academy and going through Archer is making that driveway 2 ways in order to get traffic out safely from the deck. And we also have a lower exit on the deck so you can come out on the lower level and again disperse 300 cars out of there. You want it to be safe and a means to get cars out there quickly and make it user-friendly. And so we also went and photographed the city hall and all the buildings around here to start to develop a vocabulary. So you can see on the upper left, we would like to introduce brick. It's a very brick city, and we want this building to be subservient and not draw the attention away from the city hall. We love the historic structure you have here. It's beautiful. So we see this as being a supportive building, but also very functional and an ability to bring different functions downtown and increase your parking levels. So we want to give you our commitment that working with Mike, we've worked before, and Lyman Davis and Dooley, we've got a full engineering team, we have a local civil, and we're ready to go to work, and we'd love to be your architect. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. You did good too, Timon. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? If I have the same one for you, is the answer the same? When would it be? What kind of schedule or time frame would you see and do that?
Again, we recommend the precast concrete parking structure. It will go up quicker. We think it's probably a 5 or 6 month construction delivery, and again, a couple months in there to go through the design process. We do not want to rush the city. We want you all to work with us in making key decisions to get the facility that you want. But the nice thing about the construction process is we can get those shop drawings going and fabrication of the panels while the site work's being done. And when they get delivered, it goes up like a puzzle, and it's fascinating to watch. Even the brick facade would be precast in a plant, so the quality would be very, very good. So, yeah, we think in 9 to 10 months you should have a nice facility.
Sounds good. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on it? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Mayor, I would just mention something real quick. I think several of them are here. If you recall, this was one of the signature community projects that we outlined with staff committees this year, and Bethany Watson's led this project. Eric Fortner's here. He's on the project. Melissa Forrester in finance has been involved. Captain Tucker at the police department and Brandon Poole from Public Works. And I know they've worked real hard on this, and some other staff have been key on this as well, but they've done a great job with their committee getting this project moving forward, so I want to recognize them.
Great. Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
Can I ask I just have a general question. So procedurally now, what I assume costing and other information has been shared?
I believe the staff and the committee has looked at this and I don't know if they're ready to make a recommendation at this point or at the next meeting. Or I assume we'd be voting at the next meeting, right?
What I think we would prefer to do, we've got our staff review of this, and so we'll sit down and we'll score everything according to the process. And we will provide a letter of recommendation to council so that you could award a contract at the next meeting.
Okay.
Adopt that recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, you're up again, aren't you?
Yeah, I have my next item too.
Let's see. Task Order 14 from Atkins for design for the State Route 140 Riverstone Parkway intersection, right turn lane.
So this is in regards to what Shaw and Steve were talking about earlier with the short-term option for fixing the right turn lane extension. This would improve the corridor and show that we're moving towards the fixing the entire corridor. I know you were speaking earlier about GDOT. We have spoke with them regarding this project. We took it to them a couple of weeks ago, and they did say that they would be willing to put it on their short-term rapid response, but it would probably be at least 3 years before they'd get to it. So that's why we are hoping that we will be able to get this done quicker for the city. They also did say that if we did go through the project, that they would supply the signal improvements for us as well.
They have to do that anyway, don't they? Signal, don't they? Well, maybe not improvements.
Yeah.
They have to look after those signals, maintain
Yeah, they
them,
would
don't
have to definitely give the approval for it, but I don't know that they always supply them, would always pay the cost.
Yeah, I know they don't sometimes.
So is the option we fund it and it gets done sooner, or we wait 3 years and they do it on their dime?
We fund it and it gets done sooner as
Okay.
well. I'm asking for it.
Yeah.
How much is that section?
250.
250, was that section 250,000?
250,000 is
That's
what we're
construction.
thinking is worst case scenario.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I had a question. I know that one of the bottlenecks through that section is people making a left-hand turn on the Shoal Creek going northbound. And was any consideration given to extending that lane out so you have a way to get around them?
I don't think that we looked at doing that any. I do know if you look at the interim project that they have, or the interim concept, it does show Shoal Creek being straightened out, but that's a much larger cost. I think it was 2.4, 3.4 to fix that area as an interim concept. So, I mean, it's something that we could add to this if it's something that we wanted to do.
I mean, I'd be interested to find out, even because I know right there somebody has poured some asphalt where people can run off the shoulder and go around. But I just know that's a major bottleneck. And if we're looking at short-term, interim solutions, it might be interesting just to find out.
Yeah.
If it's even doable and how much more it would be.
Yeah, we could
Completely agree.
have them price that out. I think that would be.
Yeah, to your
Then we
point,
could get to you.
I thought it was more formal because but it'd be nice to
I'm not sure
maybe firm it up a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm not sure who actually just kind of did that. But
It's nice.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah.
yeah, it helps.
It's great.
So this task order is for the
the
design and engineering, so that's on top of the $250,000. I mean, I would love to see us do this improvement, and the area's been, horrible. It's getting worse, every day. And at the same time, I have real heartburn that we would spend the money, and I'm sure if we offered to do it, GOT would gladly accept that. And I'm sure they would adjust the signals accordingly on their end. But I think I've said this before in other cases when we're looking at improvements that would benefit one development or something, and I said before, if we offer to pay for those, then they have no incentive to pay for them. So I am concerned about approaching them, and it'll take us 3 years to do it. I mean, that's only gonna make us want to do it more, make us pay for it. I guess the other question I have is sort of, impact fees, and it is a horrible area, but it does, benefit developments on that end, and I know there are more developments looking at that same area. How would we handle that or consider that? Would that be a possible source?
We would have to
of funding?
amend the capital impact element to include that section of roadway to be eligible for those funds. Now, having said that, I do believe we received an application for a conditional use permit for property at the old hospital. Is that correct? So one of the things that is a possibility is that could be made a condition of the development of that site at the old hospital, that they make these improvements on behalf of the city and that corridor.
I like that
Is that a
idea.
fair assessment, Mr. Patton?
You'd have to give them credit. If they did that, you'd have to give them credit, so.
Of course, impact fee
You're
credits.
spending the money one way or the other, but yeah.
Right.
you give them impact.
The other question I had is, have we just approached the county to see if they are willing to fund any portion of this? Is the county been consulted on this one interim improvement?
I'm sorry, I missed part of the question. You were asking if
Have we
Cherokee
consulted
County-
the county on this particular improvement to see if they would contribute?
We have not talked to them about funding with this project. We have been talking to them about help getting an ARC grant for part of this project, not this one particularly, but for the long-term or even maybe the interim project, we would be required to come up with 20% if we did get ARC funding. And another thing that Ken just pointed out is that GDOT has in the past, the city pay for the improvement and then GDOT come back and reimburse after when they had funding in place.
How often does that happen?
It happened with Riverstone Parkway or Boulevard.
Mr. Grant, Mayor and council members, with the Riverstone Parkway improvement, the developer in the city paid 100% of the cost of that on the front end. GDOT did reimburse the city for their portion as well as the developer. I do know that the Mansell Road interchange on Georgia 400 was 100% paid by the city of Alpharetta, and GDOT entered into a contractual agreement with the city of Alpharetta to reimburse for the full funding of that interchange. If I'm not mistaken, the new interchange and all at Woodstock was handled in the same similar fashion in which the city paid for that improvement and GDOT reimbursed when that project worked through their cycles and funding.
I personally don't have any problem with the task order of the amount, and I understand why that would be necessary, but personally, I think I would want to have a better idea of how it would be funded, what possible sources before it's needed, but if we go in and say, we're going to pay for the engineering and, we're going to pay for the improvements, or at least pay for the engineering, and then, no one has any incentive to come to the table to help us on that. So again, I would just want to maybe explore some of these options, of, possible developments, contributing or making that conditional and seeing if the county would participate. I think, whatever the best deal, we could get it done as soon as possible, but of course, pay the.
Okay.
I think it's very needed improvement system-wide. However, I do think that intersection does benefit a
More
portion
than just
of the citizens and certain developers and not the entire city. So I just, I'd want
But
to think about that a little
if we were to change the impact, include that in our impact fees, it would be citywide though, right? I mean, impact fees from Prominent Point area would also be paid up there as opposed to just, you couldn't we couldn't just designate that area as such, right?
That's great. Well, I
We'd
mean,
have to restructure the whole impact fee ordinance.
Yeah.
You could do that. You could have areas, but it's citywide right now.
you know,
Because it's not, we got the whole city as a district, right, for the,
Currently, with our impact fee program, all of our impact fees that we assess, roads, police, fire, parks, recreation, within our ordinance and methodology, we have designated the city as a whole as one impact fee area. In past years, the city did have two areas. We sort of determined it's probably better just to have the one area instead of the two that had two different fee assessment schedules based upon population projections, different development scenarios within two distinct different impact fee assessment areas.
okay, all right.
And I think if we find, sources like that to fund it and we could get it done sooner, I'm all for it. But I want us to explore the options as much as possible before we make commitments even to the engineering, just to see what's the best way to get this done as quickly as possible and the best possible cost. So.
I agree.
I can talk with GDOT in Cherokee County and see if we can maybe get some help with funding and see if that's an option for us.
Okay.
I want to ask one question.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Or looking at the map, it's hard for me to exactly know what is it being added. Are we just talking about the one lane that's going to turn right up at Hospital Road?
No, it's the lane coming southbound.
Southbound,
Yes,
okay.
turning west onto
Turning west, going back toward the high school?
Riverstone Parkway.
Okay, that makes more sense.
It does actually extend that right turn lane going on to
So both
Hospital
of them.
Road as well, but that's not the main purpose of the
It does
the
both.
project. Yes.
Were you alluding to an ARC grant for the design proposal
So
or for the whole project?
it will be just for, if the city decides to go, it will be just for either, we've talked about doing the long-term project, which was the $10.4 million project, and then there's also the option for the interim option for the Riverstone Parkway intersection, which is the 3 point, I forget exactly how much that one was. I think it was like 3.4, maybe a little bit more. But so with that, ARC does a call for projects, which will be in July, and the city will turn in all of our information, apply for the grant, and if we get it, the city has to supply 20% of the cost
of the whole
Yes.
project.
Yes.
So I don't think ARC would be involved if we received the grant from ARC, right?
I'm not sure what the question is.
I
applied for a grant for the whole project. Am I getting that right?
For the 10 million, I mean, for the entire.
No,
River
just
Lane
for
or
this
just
for this project.
This project. We could, but I think that for the ARC funds, we should apply for a bigger portion so that we can get more funding.
And you're planning to do that?
I would like to do that, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I would just add that for the interim or the long-range plans, that would have to go through ARC's Transportation Coordinating Committee, Cherokee County. We would have to submit a request for them to submit our request to go through ARC's review and approval process for it to be placed in the TIP and eligible for ARC funding, which would involve federal and GDOT funding for those projects, and that's the 20% match.
Okay, but that would come. That would have to come through ARC. I mean, GDOT and the feds would also be involved in an ARC grant.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, I got you.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Okay.
If this improvement is going to extend the right turn lane going south from 140 to turn west on Riverstone Parkway, I often see cars crossing the gore when it's backed up, crossing the gore to get into the left turn lane, and the straight lane is reduced because cars are bunched up there. Will this improvement help that?
I don't know if y'all were planning on making the lanes bigger or keeping them at, I assume they're probably at 11 or 12 feet now. So it does not include that. It is something that we could look at further, but I do think that this is going to make a big difference, that you're not going to see that problem near as often.
I see people in the far right lane who would much rather be in the left turn lane, and it's much shorter, and that gore is in the way, so they'll cross the gore to get to that left turn lane. Also, I think if we do this soon, it will aid the fire department to get to their destinations quicker in emergencies.
Yes.
And we won't be holding them up as much.
Good. Okay, anyone else? Mr. Grant?
One other question. I think the study is great. I think you guys did a great job, and it's, we know there are issues there, but when you hear, I think I heard 800 cars within a very short period of time in the morning and how far they stacked up. I think this confirms our suspicions on a couple of developments we've looked at recently, and traffic studies from the developers that don't sort of agree with this study. So I think now that we have that information and that data, I mean, working the opposite end, I just think we need to consider development in that corridor very seriously, which we've been doing, but now we have the data to, if we spend this money ourselves to fix it based on current issues that we have, and then we bring in, allow huge, developments or multifamily in that area, we're, fixing it and then making it worse again. So I am very glad that we have that information, that data that we can use in our planning purposes. And the other way we can help alleviate the issue is controlling, the growth in that area until we do have adequate transportation solutions for it. So, but it goes without saying. But
what's a gore?
It's the yellow hash lines that you're not supposed to cross.
Okay, thank you.
And some hash lines are white.
I think we've all
Don't
learned
cross
something
those
tonight.
either.
I didn't know what that
I
was.
was doing that for the public's benefit.
You're so kind.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. All right, next item, discussion of fixed license plate reader. Chief Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. I know you had the memorandum in your packets, and I think it was discussed earlier in the year, but we'll just kind of get a brief overview again of the fixed LPR system. I'd say the first of the year, we were, staff and I were looking at additional ways to, as far as crime prevention and deterrence in our city, and we began looking at the fixed LPR system. We already have mobile LPR systems. We have 4 of those in our patrol vehicles, but obviously officers cannot be everywhere at one time. So the fixed LPR system is exactly what it says. It affixes to, and in this case would be Georgia Power. It's a lease system program through Georgia Power that other cities in the state have gone to, but it's a fixed system, LPR tag reader system that's at highest areas of traffic. And what we found last year in looking at our data is that a lot of the actors of crimes here that occur in the city are not from Canton, and many are from south of here or in other areas and travel to the city to commit a crime and then flee the area, trying to get away from being detected by our officers or investigators or detectives without leaving any kind of trace or trail to track them. The fixed system goes on the power pole. It is a tag reader, and what it does is it does exactly that. It reads the tags, and the fixed system would be designed And let me go back. The mobile systems are designed to pick up misdemeanor offenses, misdemeanor warrants, felony warrants, stolen vehicles, wanted persons, any vehicle, any felony crimes that are associated with a vehicle, such as a kidnapping or robbery or someone wanted out of state or felonies. The fixed system would be set up and designed for basically that, is felonies. It's not going to have on there this vehicle's tag suspended or this person's license is suspended. As far as the misdemeanor, this would be for basically high crimes and felony detection. The tag reader would be pointed for lanes of travel coming into the city because a lot of actors in crimes that commit felony crimes are driving stolen vehicles. A lot of times, or coming into the city, someone that's wanted for a felony that's coming here to commit a crime. Another component of this fixed system is a video system, which would be video camera system pointed for vehicles traveling out of the city. Someone that does come here to commit a crime and flees the city, and the video component would give us another piece of evidence that we could maybe have if someone said it was a tan Honda four-door vehicle leaving Riverstone Parkway, committed a burglary at the Shell or a robbery, and then we would be able to watch that. One, look at all the vehicles on the tag that would have matched that description, and then a video. So it would be set up and designed for exactly that. Just to give you an example of a case that we've worked in the last year and a half, that a tag reader system was key in. If you remember the young female that left in a vehicle and went out west and was located in Colorado. She was located through a tag reader. So that's how, just that crime itself. But that's what we were looking at, this being really another line of defense for the city of Canton, to detect any felony, anyone that's, basically felonies, stolen vehicles that come into the city, and then those that commit crimes and then leave the city trying to be undetected. Is it a foolproof way or the magic bullet to deter all crime? No, it's not. But I think it's another avenue that the police department and the city would have as a defense against criminal activity, just as other cities. I think you saw this week, the city of Marietta is looking at it as well because of the success that they had with the felony warrants and stolen vehicles and things. And again, is it 100% foolproof on crime deterrent? But it is definitely another avenue, another investigative tool that can be used by the police department. And that's what the proposal is.
What's the cost?
The Georgia Power Lease Program on 3 units is $1,000 a year.
A year?
Yes, sir.
Is that the lease cost?
That's the lease cost, yes, ma'am. It's a monthly. It would be a monthly payment, or I guess you could pay the full price of the lease program.
Is there, for leasing, so I guess the benefit would be is, now we get to use the power poles that are.
Just from speaking to another police chief in Georgia, in the city of metro area, as far as the lease program, and I've got a good bit of knowledge and information from him, is that so obviously it's a technology and the LPRs can go down. With the lease program, it's something that Georgia Power monitors if it's working or not. And again, the fixed LPR system is not something a police officer is going to be sitting there watching every single day, watching all the time, watching the screen all the time to say, oh, there's this car. What happens is if a felony or crime occur, or a felony, someone comes into the city, stolen vehicle, wanted robbery or associated kidnapping victim or anything like that, an alert goes out to our dispatch center and to the officers. And then they get the alert of what the vehicle description is, what they're wanted for, if it's an endangered person that's missing or something like that. And then officers can converge on the air to try to locate that car. And that's when we will be alerted to the information. So what I'm saying is on the lease system, Georgia Power monitors if it's working or not, and they fix it within 24 hours if there's an issue. Because we as a police department, we're not going to be sitting there monitoring it 24/7. So if it goes down, we wouldn't really know. The vendor would know and would be able to repair that for us.
What's the incentive for Georgia Power to do it?
That I didn't go that far into the research on what their
yeah,
incentive to to do it.
It's great, but I mean, I think it's a great option, like you said, because of the technology goes obsolete so quickly and they can monitor it, so it's a great,
Yes, sir. And
great
just
approach.
cover a couple other things. We have a policy in place established already that's the best practice across the LPR lines. Already have a policy in place for our mobile. If this was approved, then we would have it readjusted for the fixed as well, which is not much different. Also, data storage. We do not have a server here in the city that stores, the LPR data for our mobile units, and we would not store the information for the fixed units. It's a third-party vendor that's applicable to state retention laws. So we would not store any of that data or that information on site here at the police department.
Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you thinking about putting the cameras?
Initially, just assessing it. And of course, we could come back and look at our crime data and say, okay, now this area is not as busy as this area. We were looking at Marietta Highway 575 area. We were looking at Riverstone Parkway 575 area and Cumming Highway 575. But we're also looking at Hickory Flat Highway and 575. And again, because Hickory Flat Highway, looking at that 140 corridor, there's been some crimes happening south of us. It's kind of crept up toward some 140, and we find that a lot of the criminals that we deal with sometimes trying to sneak their way into 140 instead of coming up 575 because 575 is watched pretty heavily between here and Cobb County. So, but that's another area that we were potentially looking at.
Thank you. Does the camera capture an image of persons in a car?
The video camera itself, probably driving through, I could not tell you. It's designed to capture the picture of the vehicle as it drives through, if it's someone fleeing an area. Obviously, the tag reader is for the tag itself. But again, we would be notified of that when we got what's called a hot list hit. It wouldn't, again, would not be viewing that all the time, unless we had, say, God forbid, an robbery on Riverstone. They left. We got information. They went 575 south. We would check that tag reader, and we would check that video camera, see if we get an image of a vehicle that matched that description, going that way.
So it would capture images of people on the street also in the camera?
Probably if they're walking on the sidewalk, I would think. I would think it would. Now, again, it's where you're putting that, because we're trying to focus on the lanes of travel, but I couldn't tell you until you look at it, until you got it fixed into place, if it's going to capture images of everyone that walks on the sidewalk.
How long would the data be stored?
State retention laws, again, on a third-party vendor is 3 years.
The data would be stored for 3 years?
3 years on, again, state retention, that's the state law. So,
and who would have access to this data?
Not unless it's a criminal, not unless it's a crime, we would not be digging through data. It's data that would be stored for a third-party vendor. We would have no probable cause or no reason to go research that data unless there was a crime associated with it.
In the history of these license plate readers being used, do you know of any instances where state or federal government has requisitioned any data?
I do not, ma'am. Personally, I don't recall.
I'd be very curious to know that. Also, did you approach Georgia Power about this equipment, or did Georgia Power approach our police department?
Through speaking to some other police chiefs, I think through one of the conferences, a winter conference, chiefs conference, and then looking at some of the demos. They always have the demos of all the equipment. Right. That's when I really learned about it, started looking at it from there, and then called it the Georgia Power rep that's in charge for that program, and that's how started looking at it.
May I give you a scenario and
Sure.
see if I understand the usage correctly? So let's say a car has been stolen in Stockbridge.
Yes.
And a child is in the car seat in there, and the authorities on the south side alert us that a car may be coming through Canton. Then we might be looking for a gray four-door sedan, and you would view the data for the hours given, say 5:30 to 8:30 p.m., whatever information they give us. Do I understand that correctly?
We wouldn't, well, I tell you this, if we had knowledge that this person was going to be in the Canton area with a kidnapped child? Is that something that we could go look back for that data? Now, if we have the tag information, we would get a hit on that car. So our officers would be extra patrolling, looking for the individual anyway. But if there's a hit, that yes, we could. Now, if we didn't have the tag information and we're scrambling around working with Henry County Police and GBI, is the tag, could we go look at that data to see if they were in that area, known if they were traveling there? Yes, and I think it would be prudent for law enforcement to do so, to see if they could locate that vehicle and the picture of that tag to recover that child.
So are you saying that predominantly this would be used for another agency to say, look for this tag number to see if it's come through Canton?
In that critical situation, yes. Yes, if it's a kidnapping or something like that, and having no knowledge, not just guessing knowledge that this person is going to be in Canton. No, we would have to have knowledge that the person lives off of Riverstone Parkway, and is known to be traveling or known to frequent this area and believed to be traveling this area. Yeah, law enforcement would be looking at that information to see if we didn't have that tag number, to see if we could locate that. And I think that would definitely be something that would be cause to do so in a situation like that.
If state or federal government did requisition our data, would you have to comply?
I'm sorry?
If state or federal government requisitioned the data, would you have to comply?
It'd have to be under open records. It'd have to make the open records laws.
Open records. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Now, let me understand. Now, I appreciate those questions Sandy asked, because as you probably know, I had some pretty strong misgivings initially about this, but I've kind of come around. I think it's probably a good tool that our police can use. For instance, as she indicated there, if something happens in the south of Atlanta, how does that information get to wherever it goes?
Different,
so it can then signal our dispatch to let you know that that car has come through here.
There's a national database when, say, NCIC puts in a tag information, say we're a kidnapping suspect and there's an alert that goes out. That database, it goes through NCIC, and then in case in Georgia, GCIC, an agency that houses an LPR, could put that in an LPR database that goes not only through the state but also goes through the country. And that's how the little girl in Colorado was located.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. So essentially, it's sort of automatic in most cases. In other words, somebody puts it in, and then the reader actually tells you if that car comes through.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So for instance, right now, if there's a Levi's call, for instance, you've got a child that's been abducted.
Sure.
You know, you're sitting in a meeting, you're sitting at home, and everybody's phone in the house starts buzzing, right? You get the alert. Well, you know, if you're driving on the road and you get the alert, you're going to be a little bit more cognizant of the vehicles around you, because you, like everybody else, want to help find this missing child. While you're looking, now we've got technology that's looking as well.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I look at it. You know, there are some downsides to it, and I'm sure there's some concerns about it as well. But I think what the chief's trying to say is this just gives us one additional tool for that situation, and also for a situation of keeping folks out of Canton that are likely here to do harm to our residents. As we know from our criminal reports, most of the crimes that are occurring in our city that are shoplifting or armed robbery or murder, those aren't our residents. They're coming here to do the bad things. So this may give us an additional tool to help us be prepared when they get here.
You mentioned 28,000, and you mentioned several locations. Is that 28,000 for up to 4 locations, or is that each location?
3 is for 3. 28,000 was the price for 3 locations.
3 locations.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And we had originally looked at 3 locations, and the thought would be, if the 3 locations were successful as far as detecting crime or wanted persons or missing persons, then down the road you could potentially go to 4, you know, or something to that effect. But the 3 locations right now that we have are not in stone, because I think it'd be good for us to go back and look at our data and say, okay, this is the best places to put these, best for the most effect.
So just
effective places.
Just as a comparison, So we will have eyes at 3 locations through this system, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we wanted to put an employee in a vehicle with those same eyes at those locations, it would take us 12 employees at a cost of about $65,000 salary and benefit per employee to provide that same level of review.
And then the unit itself, just to buy one, they're between $20,000 and $25,000 for one. Wow.
Mr. Grant?
A couple questions on the
Yes, sir.
deterrent benefits. Are there any postings or signage that the surveillance is being used?
No, sir.
So it's a deterrent because we get a reputation that people are getting caught when they come here to do crime? Is that?
Well, a deterrent, I mean, a deterrent and an investigative tool, so if people do come here, it'll give us more ability to track them down.
Quicker.
As a deterrent, and we want, to me, if these went up, I would want the word to get out, to people and residents, man, Canton has this, don't go up there because this is going to happen. They'll be able to track you down. So as a deterrent to anyone that wants to come here from other areas to commit crimes, knowing that we've got another line of defense for our community.
And in your memorandum memo, I saw that you had contacted the chief of police, I think, of Brookhaven.
Yes, sir.
And he gave you some data, I think, after a two-week period. Other cities, is there data from this system or this vendor as far as where it's being used, what cities use, and data as far as the reduction in crime when this system's in place versus when it's not?
I can tell you, Brookhaven, from talking to Chief, and I don't have the figures. You had what you had in the memorandum as far as the 2-week turnaround. But I know they've ordered more because of the drop in crime in some of their high crime areas. The story with Marietta PD was on WSB earlier. Our deputy chief told me about it, and I looked it up today and read it. And they had I think, I'm not trying to, hopefully I'm right. I think they had 4 units in areas of higher crime, and they tried it for an 8 or 9 month period. And there was a definite noticeable drop in criminal activity in some of their higher crime areas. And again, the sergeant that gave the press release said that, hey, this wasn't 100% the magic bullet, as I said earlier, but it's definitely something that we think was linked to deterring our crime here. So that's why we're going to buy X number more to deploy through the city this year. Just doing my research and just talking to Brookhaven and then looking at the Marietta story and just reading some other things is I think it definitely will be a good crime deterrent. Again, it's going to give something that's going to give us additional tools to reach out to those that flee the area and be able to reach out and figure out who they are, where they are, and be able to charge those accordingly that come here to commit those crimes. So, and again, that's what it's solely for, and it's solely for those felony crimes that really impact a lot of lives if they do come here and happen, to try to prevent those.
And I certainly applaud your efforts and your research, and appreciate that. Your memo also said that, or spoke to the fact that not only in the city of Canton, but in Cherokee County, this would help. Have you had any conversations with Sheriff Reynolds or his office to?
I brought it up in a
they
meeting.
Support this, or any possible contributions toward the system, or?
No, I brought it up to the other agency heads in a meeting, and there definitely was an interest there. Now, I didn't want to put the cart before the horse, so
right.
because obviously it's up to mayor and council. But that's something that if it was approved here, I'd say, hey, this is what we have, and obviously, crime doesn't stop at county city lines, and something happens in the county and felony wise and comes here, and their investigators want to see about, if they can get that information as far as a crime goes, a cause for crime, then that's something that definitely we already have intel meetings and we network it really well anyway. So I think that would be definitely another advantage, not just for the city, but for the county as a whole.
And just to confirm, there has to be a crime to trigger access to the information. Or, I mean, you have access, but there's a trigger as a form of a crime or potential crime as far as
We're going to have a crime, someone come into the city and we get what's called that hot list hit, or a crime that happens and leaving out of the city, or just, for instance, we're having a string of burglaries in a neighborhood and continuously having burglaries, and that's near, and we get the vehicle description of a tan vehicle, four-door vehicle committing burglaries against our community. That's something right there we could look at, and just during research, there are cities across the country have been able to solve burglary rings just because of that, because of an investigation.
Great, thanks for the information.
Is the lease for only 1 year?
Yes, ma'am.
So if we leased it and you found that it was not beneficial, we wouldn't have to re-up, right? So,
right.
That's a good point. Good point. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Okay, discussion of probation management services for municipal municipal park.
Thanks, Mayor.
Sorry you had to sit there through the whole meeting.
Well, I'm here to speak about Georgia probation, and we've used them ever since I've been in the court system, which I've been there since 2000. And they've been bought out by a professional probation company. And we've been having some issues with them. They're not supervising our probationers. They're not being prepared for court. And me and the judge met with them back on March the 5th to speak to them about the issues. Mr. Cox said that they would handle what's going on. But it hasn't improved. It's got a little worse. And so we've come up with some options to fix it. We'd like to recommend to go to in-house probation so we can supervise our own people and be in control of what they're doing. And then we've noticed that several cities has went out to in-house probation also. And the county has went out to in-house probation. Or we could go into intergovernmental agreement with Holly Springs. They have their own probation officer. Or we could go back out for an RFP and hire a new company totally.
So back up and tell me what's wrong with the company you got now.
They're not supervising the probationers correctly. Like they're letting someone not show up for probation for a couple months. They're not bringing them back to court for compliance hearings. They're not being prepared when they do come to court. Like, I can give you a thing that happened in court the other day. She had been sentenced, and on her sentence was that she didn't stay in the rehab program that she went to, that she had to go to jail for 6 months, or ever how long her probation term was left. So probation was meeting with the attorney. They was coming up with a deal on the side. But once they came back before the judge, Judge Roach, he said, you can't do that. She's already been sentenced. Once she came out of rehab, she should have went to jail immediately. She should not have been walking around for the last 2 months. That's one of the big things that's happened. But then whenever we have probationers not reporting, they're not doing their warrants or their tolling orders on them. And so they're basically got 6 months of free probation and not being watched.
And oh, by the way, during this entire time, they're collecting a monthly fee from that probationer as part of their sentence from the court for a service that they're not providing.
So they must be watching them one day a month, right? Payday?
Well, no, for a lot of these individuals, it's some type of money order, auto draft fee, and so, and I think
they can pay online and never report to that probation officer.
And I think we've also had issues too with the fact that, we do have some people who are, following the right procedures. They're doing the best they can to meet their sentence, and they see those around them that have similar charges that are not being treated the same way. And so those issues get brought up at court as well. And they've changed their representatives that come to court numerous times.
Yes, they don't follow through. Like last court day, we had 4 new women there that had never been in our court, trying to present the cases to the judge and had no clue what they was trying to do.
What is it costing us now? Does it cost us anything at all? Nothing?
No, sir.
But if we bring it in-house, what will it cost us? Anything? Nothing?
Well, the difference is right now, the probationer is paying their fees directly to the private company. And the private company has costs associated and they have profit associated. The scenarios that I think Ms. Fitz and Judge Roach are looking at are if we did it ourselves, we would have the same fee coming in and we would have costs associated with a probation officer to do all those things, but we may also have a benefit of some profit with that based on what the law allows. If we contracted out with, say, Holly Springs to do this on our behalf, they would receipt the fees, they would get the benefit, but there's a little bit more oversight because we're working directly with another jurisdiction personally as opposed to a company that might change their...
Can one person do this?
Yes, sir.
So what's that guy in Holly Springs doing now? If we put another load on him, I mean, could one person handle the extra stuff?
Yes, sir. They only have like 60 people on probation, and they would actually start with us. Georgia probation would have to finish the people they have now. We would set a date ahead and say from this date forward, you'll handle what you have at caseloads now, but City of Holly Springs will pick up, say, in July. And then they would start from 0 with us. And she can handle up to 250 people, is what the state allows. One probation person.
That's great.
If we were looking to hire a probation officer for the city of Canton, what's kind of an average salary for that person? Or would they be a salary position or?
Yes, I would assume. And I've talked to the county, and they pay around $43,000 to $50,000. It's according to what their criteria are.
Right.
And they have to have 5 years experience as a probation officer.
And do you, out of these possible scenarios, the Holly Springs version or the new company or the city, did you and Judge Roach have a preference or a recommendation?
We would like to go in-house. We'd like to have our own probation officer.
I mean, it seems to like that would give us the most control and control our own destiny, and if there's a profit scenario involved.
Well, there's some other things that go along with that as well. So if we did bring probation in-house, we could also have that probation officer responsible for community service workers. Right now, if we have community service workers, we're kind of at the mercy of whichever department might need someone and whether or not they're able to babysit that person. I mean, when somebody shows up at Public Works in flip-flops and pajamas, we send them home. A probation officer of the court's probably going to get a little bit more respect when that community service worker shows up because that person's going to be reporting back to the judge exactly what's happened. I'm not necessarily saying that's the route we need to go. We could always go into an intergovernmental agreement. What's been more troubling for me is the fact that over the last couple of years, Holly Springs is now doing their own in-house probation because of issues that they have had. Cherokee County is now doing in-house probation because of issues that they have had with this particular vendor. I don't necessarily know that we need to stick with somebody who's not providing the service that they're being paid by our probationers to accomplish a sentence.
Ms. Grant, Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. I see a plus in going in-house. Would I assume correctly that the office would be in the police department building, in the court building?
It'd be in with court.
Okay, so we would free up a storefront on North Street for occupancy of a retail. Is that the facility we're talking about, that
The same
probation?
company, but that has nothing to do with the city.
It wouldn't.
That's the same company, but that's not, the city not using them anymore is not going to eliminate that
Oh, it won't.
location.
Why not?
Well, because their biggest client is the county. Eventually, they may go away because the county is.
Well, the
But
county
still, we
has
would have
started
better
their own
supervision.
probation company.
I'm sorry.
The county has went in-house, and so they are pulling their people from that probation office also. But they will have some of the felony probationers on there that they've reduced to misdemeanors. They would still have those people coming to their office.
I like going in-house. I think the supervision would be a lot better.
Agree. Nick?
So just from a cost standpoint, it sounds like it's revenue neutral, maybe even a profit for the city to do it in-house, so little risk there, right?
Well, that'd be more of a question for Mr. Ingram. But, you know, in the numbers that we were kind of running, you're probably talking $50,000 a year in probation fees, and you're probably talking $50,000 to $60,000 a year in salary and benefits. So it may be a wash. But again, you know, it can always be set up as one of those, we're going to try it for a year and see how it works, and if it doesn't work. Or we could make it part of the budget process. We're not going to do it right now, but we're going to look at this as part of the budget process. And if it's something that we want to do, we can make it effective October 1 and run it that way and try it out. You know, ultimately, I think my concern is that when your municipal court judge is saying this is not working, you know, we've got to look into some solution. And it could be that we sit down and we, you know, meet with Holly Springs and say, okay, what are your actual terms if we were to do an intergovernmental agreement for your staff person to help with this?
Is there a limit that you can charge someone on probation?
No, it's normally $40 is what Georgia probation tells us that their fee is.
Okay.
They pay $40 to them, and then they pay a $9 crime victim impact fee.
And depending on what their probation is, there may be additional fees for random drug testing or, you know, things like that.
Okay.
Ankle monitoring.
Yep.
They charge for all that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion of the next steps of the Jones Building. Nicholas, you want to start that?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
That's your thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I think kind of took to heart what I think about a month ago you said, you know,
We got to do something.
think about something. And so I agree. I mean, I think the first phase is fantastic and it looks great. I know previously it was put up for sale, but it was, you know, I could imagine if I was a developer or someone trying to purchase it, I might be concerned what's underneath everything. And so the work that we did to you know, get it structurally sound, you know, hold it to the historical standards and really make it, you know, structurally sound from an exterior standpoint is good. After you're kind of, I'll call it a challenge to us to kind of come up with a decision, one of the things that I did was turn to Facebook and as a means to figure out what constituents really want. I'd say it's a sample size, you know, so it's not everyone, but it was a decent sample size of folks that did respond, and so there was a couple of themes that started to resonate. So I thought, you know, I'll share those, and you know, again, this isn't a solve all, but it'll lead to more discussion. But the first theme that just kept coming up over and over was, you know, let's bring developers in. You know, let's bring a mindset to let them determine what the market needs locally. I heard ideas of, you know, love to see a mini Ponce Market or retail on the bottom. rooms and beds and offices or event space on top, and even a rooftop bar or dining on top. So, again, there's ideas, and there's a lot that has to go into that, but ideas. I want more ideas, or more opportunities to live, work, and play. Again, I would imagine a developer could bring this vision and feedback. A lot of feedback from folks saying they just don't think the city should own the building, but want to protect the historical preservation, similar to what we did with the Panera complex right next door. Again, a lot of the themes, great feedback and advice, but just really kept coming back to a developer. And so, I don't know what the options are exactly, next steps, but, would be curious to see if there, what there is that we could do to, I don't know if it's a developer day or, the DDA can get involved, just there's a lot of ideas out there, but, there was an overwhelming response again in the sample size that responded, but that was more around, let's not have the city own this building, let's put it up for sale, and let's have a developer or someone more suited to kind of take into account the needs of the community and what could thrive there through an investment.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. McGrew.
I heard a lot of people saying that they wanted more retail. They wanted a market and beds. People want a place to live downtown. Also, that the city doesn't need to own it, that a developer would be a way to get these things that are needed and wanted. The Developers Day that the DDA did a couple of years ago was extremely successful and well attended. Is there another one planned soon?
I don't know. Developers Day?
Yeah, they've had conversations about it. One of the reasons why one was not scheduled is basically at that point we didn't have a downtown development manager.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, for instance, the next board meeting of the Downtown Development Authority, they're going to be taking a tour of the mill project so that they can kind of see exactly what's going on down there. I know that there is some interest in hosting another one of those events, at some point, but I don't think one's scheduled at this time.
Mr. Grant?
I've heard similar feedback to Mr. Estes and Ms. McGrew as far as the building. I want to kind of start with saying that I'm so proud of that building and what we've done with it, and I totally support what we've done with it and returning it back to the shining star it is in the middle of town. I also think our phase one was number one, to get the building back in our possession so we could control its destiny, and then also the historic preservation and restoration on the exterior, which we've done, and it's impeccable. And I think that not only makes downtown more attractive, and I think it also increases property values of everyone who owns property downtown. I know we've talked about possible uses in cultural arts center or civic center like that, and I think I recall the architect saying around $16 million to get the building to that purpose. Again, I don't know if that is accurate or not, but I've also I've looked at other cities that are doing cultural arts center, and there are a lot, and I totally agree that arts, bring people to the city, and is good for everyone. And most of the cities I've been looking at, and again, I haven't done extensive research, but they usually have a bond or referendum to build these facilities. But I was looking at cities, kind of Canton, same population and same size, and kind of found that in addition to the building itself, the annualized operational costs of being anywhere from $500,000 on the low end to 1.5 million, a year for maintenance, upkeep, staffing, et cetera, equipment, and I think most of those were for new buildings, and so I think for an older building, it may be more, maybe less. I'm not sure. So, and again, I think the idea of a cultural arts center is a good one, or a civic center, and could we use that kind of mid-size facility? And I don't know of a lot of really great ones kind of in the area, but I wondered if that was something we were really interested in, possibly looking at building that versus trying to retrofit a formal mercantile building to that. And if we built that, could we build it along the river, where we're investing in? But those are just some thoughts. And I do think, again, I think we've accomplished phase one, what we set out to do. And I think if we did possibly look at selling the building, but with very strong covenants that the historic restoration and the exterior has to be maintained like it is, and that we had in the covenant that retail only on the street level, I think would be good, and kind of return the building to its original purpose, but also ensuring that the restoration remains intact. So I'm interested in, I think from the beginning, like what's the best possible use of that facility, and maintaining that facility, the restoration, for the citizens, and I'm totally open to any and all ideas, and even if it is a cultural arts center, is there a developer that can do that for us? But the one thing I do think that the longer it sits empty, even though the exterior looks great, I think it becomes in the public's mind or developer's mind a little less attractive. So I would like to see us at least get a plan, at least try to move it to phase two, or explore the options. What are the best possible opportunities, and what does the public want? What are they willing to pay for if that's what they want? And so again, those have been my thoughts. But first of all, I'm really proud of what we've done with the building, and I think we've ensured that building is going to remain a landmark in the city of Canton, and I think we can control that, going forward, whichever way we choose. But I'm proud of how far we've come, and would like to see us actively begin the next phase. So, sure, Ms. McGrew.
Not to be redundant, but I'd like to echo what Mr. Grant said. Canton is becoming very well known for our historical preservation, and we're not the sleepy little town that we used to be. We are up and coming, and things are happening here, and we should be very, very proud of our historical preservation. I think it's a priority for all of us, and the work that's been done on the Jones Building is wonderful. I'm really happy that we did that. It's a diamond in the center of our city, and done right, it can be almost palatial in a charming, historic kind of way. And I think that with the right developer in there and with the right concept, we can achieve this. And as I think back on when we started with our historic preservation in our old buildings, we had a couple of council members who were more cautious about it. I think we'd make Mr. Hookie Huffman proud, because I know that he had a lot of reservations about what we're doing. I think he'd be really proud of what's going on, what we're doing. I would love to see this turned into something that's used by the public on Sunday. It was mentioned to me yesterday, we had a visitor from Doraville, a councilwoman from Doraville. I spent the day with her and showed her around, and she asked what was open on Sunday, and I said, not much. 2 restaurants. And so I'd be excited to have something to bring people in every single day.
Okay. Mr. Young?
I'll echo also what Mr. Grant and Ms. McGrew were saying, that I don't think long-term the city wants to be a landlord. I don't think we or it's not in our long term, but I think finding a good developer to take over that building would be the ideal solution. But in the interim, while we look for that person, that building, the way it is structured, it is very easily subdividable into sections. And as I said at the retreat, I think right now, since we've got the outside looking so good, one of the most important things for finding a developer and getting the public excited is getting people inside the building. I know that we have all pretty well agreed that one of our goals for that building is to have a public space, a visitor center / gallery / city history, whatever you want to call it, with public facilities. Now that we have got our downtown events thriving, we want to get rid of the porta-johns. So we want to build some facilities for the citizens to use and not ever have to use porta-johns again. So I'm thinking it would be a good idea to find out if we can get some quotes or get some idea what it would take to at least do that part of the project of the interior, like where the old post office was on that corner of that end of the building, which I think is the ideal area and could easily be sectioned off. And further, I think it would be, and I understand you have to do some safety things to make it happen, but for the first Fridays until something is done, maybe have some people inside, let people come and take a look around. See what's there that you can't see peeking through the window. And get some excitement and get some people understanding what's there to work with. And developer days, of course, but I would love to see us find out what it would take to get at least the part we want long-term up and running, and then work on the rest as we can. But I agree with finding the proper developer is key to doing the project well.
I think if we did let the public in, and then we'd have to do at least a certain amount of work in there because, there's some holes in the floor and stuff like that could be pretty dangerous.
It'd be bad if a toddler fell in.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, I know there's some safety concerns that have to be addressed,
but could be, sure. It's good.
Some good ideas from everybody. I kind of agree with some of that, and that with what we did next door with Panera Bread, the old school buildings and cotton mill offices and things. Yeah, we brought a developer in. He's done a good job with it. He's made the city look much better. The Jones building is Canton. It never will change unless we tear it down. It's going to be what people know that have lived here forever. So it needs to be done something with that's really special. And I think somebody like Misty Martin, who knows everyone pretty much in the state, she knows a lot of developers. I know her personally. Could help us bring some developers. I have talked to many in the past who have come up with all kinds of ideas of things they wanted to put in Canton. We've chosen not to do some of them, like some children's services and things of that nature right in the middle of town. We didn't think that was a good thing. We didn't have the parking, things of that nature. But I think there are a lot of things that would bring people to Canton, which I think that would be a good thing. We still don't have we got restaurants now. That's bringing a lot of people to town. But as Ms. McGrew said, something to bring people to town every day, not just Monday through Friday or Saturday. I'd like to see, in fact, I'll be glad to volunteer my services. I know several of the people that through the years I've contacted, and they've contacted me about doing projects here in Canton. And they said, well, when you get a building that you want something done with, we are developers. We would love to come to Canton as it grows. So I'd be glad to offer my services to help. And I'd be glad to talk to Misty. I know her pretty well.
Okay. I think the biggest drawback that we had when we first started thinking about selling the Jones building was there was no parking. And now with the prospect of parking deck downtown, not very far away, makes that much more palatable. And as I've listened to everybody speak, it seems like we're mostly in agreement that the city doesn't need another building downtown, except maybe for, as Ferris was talking about, someplace with public facilities and maybe a welcome center in a portion of it. So I just echo that I think we need to look at maybe a developer coming in, that it's much more palatable now that we will have a place to park.
Mr. Grant?
And I think parking is certainly a big issue, and it's something I kind of left off of my thinking about it. But I think with the cost of the building, what had been appraised, sort of, again, I think all hinging on the right person. We don't, as Mr. Goodwin said, it's a very special building, a very special place, and I think the right person would invest in that, and we need to ensure that that is the case. But if we did sell it to the right person, I think that would put us a long way of funding our parking deck, which is an immediate need. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. And then I think with Mr. Yon and sort of, I think public-private partnership is something we really need to pursue as well. And, you know, perhaps one of the covenants is that there is a public area or a visitor's area maintained, for the city. But I think there are lots of opportunities. I see what's, going on at the mill, and it's just still exciting, and people thinking outside the box, but it's also bringing that whole property back online in new and exciting ways. And again, I think that the Jones Building just has many opportunities there, many possibilities, and again, I'm interested in looking at all of them, but sooner rather than later. So.
I'm just curious, Mr. Peppers, have you had any traffic asking about, is the building for sale? Or
Jerry Cooper would like to buy it back for the courthouse.
I bet he would.
No.
A developer, I mean.
I think initially when we took on the build projects around town, would stop by and say, "Hey, what are you going to do with that? I'd sure like to buy it." We haven't marketed it, so
right.
I don't think that's I don't think it's a fair way to answer
right.
that question.
Well, I was just curious if people are knocking on your door. They're not.
No, most questions we get about it are what's going to happen next,
right.
and I think everybody wants to know, and it's like, and I just tell them, I say, I don't know, I don't know. What are your ideas? Because the bottom line is, I think that we all agree that it's a great building, and we've done a great job on it. And I think we also agree that, Canton is different than everywhere else in Cherokee County because we do take care of our historic resources, and we do think a lot about the culture and the arts and the recreation and what natural resources we have. And our citizens have come to expect that. And whatever we do with that building, whatever we do in the future of SPLOST projects or referendums for things, I think that commitment towards culture and arts and recreation and the river and taking care of those historic resources is going to have to be a fabric of that. And so, that's just kind of the story I tell.
Thanks.
And I agree. I think, this isn't something that we have to decide tonight, but also, we don't want to be here in 6 months still kind of tossing things around. So I think it is good to continue to get feedback, but my only, I guess, feedback that I've received from folks is, or that I interpret, is that we don't want to wait too long because there is a bit of impatience. Like, okay, you spent money, what's next? And so that's a lot of the questions I get. It looks great, what's next? And so if we can answer that sooner rather than later, I think that'll just benefit us all.
Well, I remember when we toured the buildings that Mr. Harris has renovated, and he said, we said, why haven't you rented them? And he said, I'm looking for a quality renter. I'm looking for a quality somebody to move in there. I think that's what we would be looking for, quality people we're, you know, that's what you were saying. That's what all of us are saying, that it's special and we're like him. We have these 3 buildings now, the old school, the old mill office, and now the Jones building that have no tenants or no one who's in there. So I think we need to be thinking, I'm glad you brought it up. I think we need to be thinking about next steps.
I will say that one of the most exciting phone calls I've received over the last couple of weeks is from an attorney that owns multiple buildings. And he basically said to me, you know, we're at the point now where maybe my office on the ground level is not the best use of the space, and I might be able to get more money on a restaurant or a retail moving. I think that's kind of the direction everybody's excited about going, you know, and so, you know, and of course he turned around and said, are you going to have offices in the Jones building? Because I can move it there. I mean, we don't have an answer for it, you know, but the fact that people are looking to invest downtown just goes back to all the hard work that this council has put into making downtown projects a priority.
Is that is a potential solution to do similar what we did with the police station to say DDA, go find the right person, or is that, what's the procedure there?
Right, well, the city has to do it by auction, so you don't really have the ability to solicit proposals and wade through them and say, I like that better, I like that better.
Okay.
So if you wanted to do proposals, let people come to you with ideas that you didn't necessarily have to pick the highest price. You would do that with a partnership with the DDA. We would do a similar agreement. You'd put the parameters on that the DDA can go for proposals without committing to anybody. Mm-hmm. And then you could sort through proposals and say, well, we don't like any of your ideas, or find out nobody would buy it, you know, whatever. Okay. So that would be one way to do that.
Did want to mention, just I think in the past few weeks, the Marietta Market opened, I don't know if that's the official name of it, but it's like a food hall and arts and crafts, and I think they're putting their farmers market in there. So I don't know if it's public-private or this the exact facts about that, but I do know that people are talking about it, and it's exciting, and existing merchants in Marietta are just excited and amazed at what a regional draw that's become, and people are talking about it, you know, in the whole area and saying, have you been to this place? And it's really, really cool, and it brought a lot of new businesses into Marietta as well. I think it's a great facility. It may be something that interesting for us to kind of go and take a tour of that as well. So,
okay. All right. I would like to share the minority opinion, if I may, but I will. Okay. You know, I think one of the most important things that we as a city can do is to provide an atmosphere that is conducive to making our city a destination. Canton's not a destination now. We're going to be just like every other city that develops if all we do is pile retail here, and retail here, and that's all. Okay, and that's not really what I like. I think we want to be something special, even more special than we are, and we are special. Don't get me wrong. It's easy to get development. It's not that hard to get. One time it was hard for us to get some retail. It's not hard anymore. The hard part is making sure we get the right kind of development. I think that, at least that's my opinion. I think that as we get that development, we have to really protect the quality of life that we have here now. We don't want to destroy that. We want to enhance it, make it better. And I'm not sure that just retail makes it better. And I think a special cultural arts center and event center could bring in things like, think about this. Go walk into a museum in downtown Canton, this big old elephant-like building there, and you see art, Picasso, Monet, Van Gogh, Warhol, and others here in Canton, Georgia. And believe me, that can happen. That can happen. And these are names that, you know, I thought I would never see. You know, artists that you would never see that are worldwide known, you know. It's amazing. And it's one thing to see those pictures in a book, but it's another to see that painting face to face, or whatever art it may be, to see an original art that's really from someone that's really well known. You know, these are not only for entertainment, actually, but it's also for an educational experience, I think, for our younger citizens, as well as adults and students. You could have art classes, of course, painting, pottery, weaving, all the different types of art. Maybe even tie-dyeing or dyeing ties. I think a cultural arts center would really complement the planned Historical Society's museum that's coming as well. I think it could be a tremendous educational tool and an economic driver that would bring businesses here whose families appreciate a little culture. I think it would be important. We currently have approximately 31,000 square feet of retail office space available to rent in our downtown right now. That doesn't include the Jones Building, of course. 31,000. And another 250,000 is coming online at the mill on the Etowah fairly soon, over the next year or two. So it's not like we're in a crunch and don't have any retail space. We have retail space. Canton is a special place for me. And it was special, you know, when some time ago I didn't know what Mexican food was. We didn't have Mexican food in the city of Canton. You know, I'm glad we do now, though. I'm very glad we do. And you even had to drive to Marietta to get a pizza. Yeah, we didn't have a pizza joint here. You know, but Canton was still special to me, partially because of my history here. You know, but it goes even further than that. It was much special before we had Dunkin' Donuts, Old Charlie's, McDonald's, and all that. You know, I've seen all that come along. And it's been good. It has helped to enhance the quality of our life, I think, here in the county, but in the city and the county and the whole community. I can just eat so many donuts, you know, no pizzas and stuff, but I can try. And I'm so glad we do have those choices and opportunities. But Canton was special to me then, and it's special to me now as well. And I think that as we continue to make this city better, just simply retail is not going to make it uniquely special. I think that we need to make Canton uniquely special, different from the other cities, most of them. And we can do that. Downtown needs an anchor, it needs a focal point, and it needs to be a destination. And I think the Cultural Arts Center and Events Center or something on that order, I mean, and a mix of different types of uses perhaps, could be just that. Something special that truly separates Canton from most other cities. I think that's what we need to do. Now, I think there's a way to make it happen. I mean, you know, you look at it as far as, you know, yeah, there's a lot of cost to do something. But a couple of ways. You can do it a little bit at a time, and it takes a lot longer. Or you could do it, as someone mentioned, maybe a bond referendum as part of continuing our trail system and completing that, and a Cultural Arts Center and History Museum, or whatever this council decides to do with that, or what they want it to become. But, I mean, that could get the money quick. I'll be honest with you, I believe the public would support continuing those trails and parks and a Cultural Arts Center. I really believe they would in a bond. And when you offer them the opportunity to choose whether they're willing to pay for that or not, I believe they'd pay for it. I know I would be happy to do that if I could, you know. But anyway, I think that's a possibility, and that's all I got to say. Is that enough? Thank you all very much. Mr. Peppers.
rewind us a little bit to when we did our SPLOST negotiations. If you'll recall, initially there was a joint, what the county was pursuing as a Tier 1 project, which is this 800 megahertz communication system for public safety. And we determined, the group of cities determined that that really didn't qualify as a Tier 1 project, but all of us were willing to take our portion of that project and fund it through our SPLOST buckets. And so we put $1.5 million in our SPLOST for emergency communications equipment and technology. And just so you understand what's going on, Cherokee County has moved forward with the creation of an 800 megahertz communication system. Cobb County already has one. Bartow County has one as well. And so by Cherokee County having this system, we'll be able to be operable with those two systems as well and improve communications for our officers, police, fire. I believe school police are in on this as well throughout the year. Right now, we operate off some different systems, and sometimes we drop employees and what have you. So basically what's happening is Cherokee County is funding the tower works, the backbone of the system, the technology of the system, and they're funding the equipment for the Sheriff's Department, Fire Department. Our responsibility is to pay for our equipment. And so what we're doing is we're buying it under the contract with Cherokee County. And so what you have before you is that 800 megahertz agreement that basically lays out about it's $1.2 million in cost. The county is going to front load everything, get all of our equipment for us, and we're going to make that a 3-payment installment. So a third of that would be due this fiscal year, then a third next fiscal year, and then a third the following fiscal year. We budgeted, like I said, $1.5 million in that category of SPLOST. The reason why we did that is every new officer that comes on board will have to pay for that equipment for that particular officer to add them onto the system. So there's going to be an ongoing cost to us out of that bucket. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. The chief probably has more technical knowledge of the system than I do, but on the whole, this is our portion of that countywide operation.
It's important, isn't it? Okay.
It's probably the most important thing that the police department will be involved with.
Yeah, that's great.
A couple questions. I did look back, and I know we allocated $1.5 million. I know there'll be some additional costs, but correct me if I'm wrong, but we also kind of changed that category to emergency communications and equipment so that we could, if there is more money left over there, that we could use it for other communications.
We did it for a couple of reasons. The first reason why we did it is we had to outline where that funding of SPLOST was going to go. At that point, Cherokee County did not have an agreement with Cobb County to piggyback off of their system. They did not have an agreement with Motorola for the deployment of this system. And so my big fear was when we put our SPLOST proposal together, if that all falls apart, now I've got $1.5 million dedicated to something that I'm going to have to do alone now. And so that's why we gave ourselves a little bit of leeway in that.
Yeah. That leads me to my second question, and I know the SPLOST, all the cities had an allocation for the same system. Just confirmation that all cities are still in and going to contribute the amount that
they are. And so from that,
at the same time, so it is a true countywide system.
So from that standpoint, the way this agreement is written, it's between us and the county. If one of the other cities didn't participate, it would not diminish our ability to use the system, so to speak. But it also, they understood everybody's working off different fiscal years and when things are going to come on board. And so basically each city's doing their own agreements. But the conversation I had with the city managers the other week is that everybody's working through the process of getting it scheduled on their agendas to move forward with the system.
Anyone else?
I have two items under my report tonight. The first is an update on a project that came out of the retreat. As you know, we have had discussions about ethics. And so at the retreat, what was brought forward was that the city attorney, city clerk, and I would sit down, review our current ethics ordinance, look at any potential issues that are there and outline the process for you. And that we would also look at ethics ordinances from other jurisdictions and maybe bring back some best practices. So you've got a document before you, a report. It has ethics ordinances from other communities. What I tried to look at when I was pulling information, I tried to look for cities in similar sizes as us. I tried to look for cities that may have newer ethics ordinances. So, for instance, Milton is one of the newer cities in the state, and so I pulled their ethics ordinance because it's a decade newer than ours is, and our ethics ordinance is a template that GMA had put forward. I also tried to look for ethics ordinances that were kind of at an extreme or maybe more in depth than ours was and pull those together. I've outlined a memo to you to start this document that kind of outlines the current process for our ethics ordinance. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm going to let you read it. But I've also outlined some potential issues that we have in our current ethics ordinance, the way it's set up and how it might not work correctly. For instance, our ethics ordinance says that if someone brings a complaint, they take the complaint to the mayor or the mayor pro tem if the complaint's against the mayor. The mayor or the mayor pro tem appoint 2 council members and the city attorney to sit on a committee to investigate that claim. Nowhere in our ordinance does it say that you can't appoint the person who's being complained against to be on that committee. Common sense would say you wouldn't do that, but most ordinances take it a step further and they outline exactly who can serve and why you wouldn't be able to serve on such committees. Also, ours calls for a board of ethics, but the board of ethics is represented by 1 appointment from the mayor, 1 appointment from council, and then those 2 appointments decide the 3rd appointment, who has to be a member in good standing with the bar. There's no language in there that says that the mayor couldn't appoint himself, the council couldn't appoint a council member, and they couldn't appoint the city attorney to that position. I don't think that's what was thought about when it was put in place, but there's no prohibitions to that necessarily. There's also not any timelines in there. So it doesn't say when a complaint comes in that the mayor or mayor pro tem has to appoint this investigative committee within so many days, but you do have 60 days between the date when the complaint came in until you have to adjudicate the whole thing. And so, you could be setting yourself up for some issues there. I also outlined some best practices and maybe some things. There's a section in there called additional research. I'll tell you about the ordinances that we've pulled. But when I was reading the ordinances, what I was trying to do is put together some questions for you that could help drive the conversation for your staff in bringing good ordinance to you. So, some communities use their ethics ordinance not only for their elected officials, but apply it to their boards and commissions, appointed officials, and even to their city staff. So that's one thing to consider. Timelines in here. Some ethics ordinances are just related to what the state calls a pecuniary or financial interest. Some take that further and talk about times when you should recuse yourself, what a conflict of interest is, among other things. So that's in there. A lot of information about how these boards are appointed. So in our instance, as I said, the mayor appoints 1, council appoints 1, those 2 appoint the 3rd. In some communities, the way it's set up, the clerk actually finds, I believe it's Milton, the clerk finds anywhere between 9 and 15 attorneys who don't live in the city of Milton, who don't do business with the city of Milton, and are in good standing with the state, and they have to have practiced law for at least 5 years, and they may serve, and they pull a pool from that. That's probably a little bit more extreme to one side. Another city, the way theirs is set up, the mayor gets 3 appointments to the pool. Each council member gets 2 appointments to the pool, so you have 15 people in the pool, and they randomly select 7 from that pool, with one caveat. If you're the council member who's been complained against, your two appointments are pulled out of the pool for consideration. So your nominees don't get to decide your case. So there's just lots of things to think through. One thing I do mention in here, we've just had a wonderful training with Carl Vinson Institute on our supervisors here at City Hall. Carl Vinson has several ethics modules that we could bring as classes to you, and we could invite other cities to participate if we wanted to. But they specifically have one as it relates to local government leadership. They have one that relates to the planning and zoning process, and then they have one that relates to a portion about contracts and procurement. So if that's something that you're interested in, we could schedule something like that so you could have more conversations about that while you're also diving into some of these other issues on an ethics. But what we've tried to do is give you as much information to get you thinking about what it is that you would like to see, because ultimately you're going to have to tell us what it is you think is a good process. And so Ms. Bell has made sure everybody has a highlighter with their packets, so just get to mark it up, right? Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
What about a consideration at all on what's coming inbound, right? You know, because there's always a scenario where you can get, you know, so-and-so from Indiana who...
So what some communities have done is they have it set up so that they don't hear ethics complaints during certain seasons. So if it's an election season or a qualifying season, they're not going to take ethics complaints because it could be that somebody's filing a complaint just to skew an election. So they have a quiet period. Some cities set it up so that there's a penalty. So if you're filing an ethics complaint and it's a frivolous complaint, there's found to be no sufficiency or whatever, it gives the city the ability to levy a fee back on the complainant to help pay for the process. So it might cut down on a frivolous complaint. Some cities give the ethics board or the investigative committee, depending on how it's set up, the ability to look at the complaint and also think about other circumstances, such as, did the complaint come from someone who ran against that person for office? You know, did the complaint come from someone who might have a business conflict with that individual outside of the complaint? So it gives a little bit of leeway there. You know, other cities, ours says that if you are alleged of a violation and the Board of Ethics finds that you have violated, that they could publicly reprimand you or censure you. So don't do that again. Some cities take it a step further and say, okay, if there's a violation, we will institute a fine of not less than $100, not more than $500 against that individual. Some of them go as far as, if they involve staff in their ethics ordinance or appointed boards in their ethics ordinance, that if the body finds that that person has violated an ethics issue, that that person could be removed from a board, or that group could recommend termination of that staff person. So it's just kind of it's a hodgepodge. And so, you know, what you need to be thinking about when you're going through the process is, what's really a violation of ethics? You know, what are we concerned about? That's one thing I mentioned in here as well. A number of these do a great job at the beginning of outlining what the intent of ethics is in the city, what their goals are as it relates to honesty or integrity or transparency or what have you, so that the board kind of has something to measure up against. Ours doesn't go through that process. It's basically if you have a financial interest or not, you know, and whether it's a true interest or an indirect interest, which are defined differently in the law. So,
what do you think? Timing-wise, you know, we've got our highlighters, but is it, are we thinking in a month we come back, or is this a discussion as soon as the next meeting?
Well, what I would suggest is that, you know, take time, read through the information, you know, and think about what you think is important, you know, as individuals. And if for instance, if training is something you want us to pursue, we can go ahead and start setting something up, you know, on those particular areas of ethics Not necessarily because they're going to bring something to you, but it might get you to thinking about different things in a different way. We can go ahead and set that up. My hope would be that maybe by the end of summer, we would all be kind of on the same page as to what we want to see so we can start drafting things and hopefully get something approved and in place by the end of the year.
I think the training part is very important.
I'd like that.
Move that.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you know, if the goal is to change the process on how you appoint an ethics board, it would be nice to have that system in place so that come January of next year when the new council is set, the process for appointing that board is done at the same time, if it's by a board member or what have you, so that it's kind of seamless with the new council.
Okay.
The other thing I have to mention to you, I've given you a copy, just so you know, June 30th is the deadline for our current extension on service delivery strategy. And to this point, the consultant that the cities cooperatively hired last year to do some analysis of service delivery and tax inequity issues has an opinion. The county has a different opinion. I don't know that in the interim we're going to get to an agreement in the next 60 days. One of the things that at least the city managers have discussed is that, you know, as part of the process, that next round of discussion may come in the form of mediation. And so there is a law practice out of McDonough, Smith and Welch, that does a number of service delivery projects on behalf of municipalities. Most of theirs don't go to litigation. They are dealt with in the mediation phase. But basically what would happen is we would need to, along with the other cities, agree to hire that firm to represent our interest in that mediation phase with the county. So what I've provided to you is basically information from Smith Welch, information about retaining them, if that's what we want to do, and a resolution that we would have to approve to do that. We would not go it alone. So far, it appears that all of the cities are willing to work together as it relates to this process, not necessarily because we want to go a litigation route, but because we think it's important for our citizens to understand where their county tax dollars that they pay as part of their county taxes are being used within their city limits. So I wanted to bring that to you. I hope you'll look at it. If you have any questions on it, feel free to let me know. My proposal to you is that if everybody is in agreement to it, we would add it to the agenda for May 16th to possibly, you know, authorize the mayor to sign the engagement letter and approve the resolution that's included in that document.
Okay. Nick?
Yes, sir.
So I guess if we have this, it means that you feel, in your opinion, that we may not be at a point where the cities and the county can't agree on a service delivery strategy?
Pretty much.
I think that the county has an opinion on how they can take all of the funds that come into the county and make the math work to make it appear that there's not a tax equity issue. I think there is a tax equity issue. I think that the money that our citizens pay in county taxes, they get fewer countywide benefits than unincorporated residents are getting for the same tax dollars.
Got it.
And I think it's our responsibility to our taxpayers to be able to say, you're getting what you're supposed to, what you're paying for. You're getting that service back. And I don't know that we can say that now.
Yeah, services that are predominantly for unincorporated residents are supposed to be paid for with dollars, tax dollars that come from unincorporated residents and not incorporated residents.
So a city employee effectively is double taxed.
In some cases,
In some
I believe,
cases.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry.
I'm in support of this, not because I'm in support of litigation or going down that route, but from what we've learned in this process going through there, that, when we sign off on that service delivery strategy, we are verifying that we agree how our citizens are being taxed and that we think it's accurate and fair. So I think at a minimum going through this process, if it's only just for education for both all of us elected officials and also for the public, because I get questions all the time like, why am I paying city and county taxes? And so I'd like to have the accurate information to say, because, we looked at it and here's exactly what's happening. So I think for that fact alone, we owe it to our taxpayers, because it's not our money, it's theirs, to be able to answer those questions accurately and timely. So again, it's not that this is an avenue that anyone would have chosen, but I think, especially since the other cities are in agreement, I think that's wonderful, and that's a lot of that we all agree that this is something we want to pursue for the interest of educating ourselves and taxpayers on how their funds are being spent and what they're getting in return for those services. So
I think we have an obligation for our taxpayers to find out what's what. I mean, it doesn't have to be adversarial necessarily. It's just that we want what's fair for our taxpayers, and when someone can tell us what that is specifically, then that's what we need to pursue. I mean, that's our job. We've got to look after our taxpayers and make sure that they aren't paying for services in the county and paying for the same services in the city. So anyway, I think it's something that we probably needed to do 10 years ago, but things just we agree and go on and pay little attention to what was going on. To be honest with you, I think that's the way it's been historically, but we finally decided among the cities, I think that it's time to really look at what's going on, and if it comes out they're doing a great job spending our money, so be it. But I mean, that's the way it is. But I think there's enough question about where some of the tax dollars for the city is actually being spent that we need to move forward with this.
Well, I'll just tell you the classic example that's come up in conversations is that, as a taxpayer of the county provides funding every year to the library system on behalf of county residents. Well, historically, the city of Canton has also provided money to the library system. Does a city resident in Canton receive more benefit for that extra money that we provide than they would if they were just an unincorporated resident? The answer is no. And so you get to the question of, okay, then why are we taking additional tax dollars from our resident to get them extra services that may not be there?
When they're already paying the county taxes that's going there.
That's correct.
And this isn't a Canton thing. This is a cities of Cherokee County that are clearly all feeling the impact.
Well, it's a statewide thing. This is not something that's new to us. We're required by the state of Georgia every 10 years to update our service delivery strategy, to agree that the services that we're providing are efficient, effective, and that there's no double taxation or tax equity issues. And so the state's required us to do that. We're just kind of at the point now where it's like, okay, now maybe it's time for us to review this and make sure that things haven't changed since 10 years ago and that we're doing it the proper way for our citizens. So.
Anyone else?
That's all I have.
Thank you. All right. And so we don't have a executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Goodwin made the motion. Mr. Grant seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye. Yeah, that was.